Chapter 27:18. Ping Hanzhuan narrowed his eyes. He didn't expect these people to be from the Impermanence Palace. In fact, when he saw Gui Yuan, Zhuowen had already guessed his identity. Before the young woman died, she had said that Gui Shan's identity wasn't ordinary and that he had a big brother who was said to be a core disciple of the Impermanence Palace. Zhuowen guessed that the young man with the sword in front of him was Gui Shan's cheap big brother. However, what Zhuowen did not understand was how these four people had caught up to him so quickly and were actually able to block his path in advance. One had to know that the space-time roulette under Zhuowen's feet was unparalleled in the world. No matter how extraordinary these four people's identities were, they couldn't have a divine tool that was faster than the space-time roulette. Regarding this, Zhuowen was still very confident. However, these four people just so happened to arrive before him and block his path. After all, these four people were chasing after Zhuowen, so they would definitely investigate first. This would take a lot of time and it would be even more impossible for them to catch up to Zhuowen. In fact, what Zhuowen didn't know was that the Impermanence Palace was a subordinate force of the Huangji family. They had a teleportation array that led directly to the Huangji family. Of course, this teleportation array wasn't open to the public and was only open to important people of the Impermanence Palace. Originally, with Gui Yuan's identity, it was impossible for him to use this teleportation array. However, they had benefited from Ping Han. Ping Han had been appointed as the next palace master of the Impermanence Palace by Fu Qi. His authority had long surpassed that of a core disciple and he was on equal footing with the elders of the Impermanence Palace. Naturally, he had the authority to use this teleportation array. It was because of this teleportation array that they were able to arrive at the Huangji family in advance and wait outside for Zhuowen's arrival after completing their investigation. Of course, the person who guessed that Zhuowen would come to the Huangji family's capital was Ping Han. In his opinion, Gui Shan was a member of the Impermanence Palace after all. After killing Gui Shan, the murderer would definitely be afraid of the revenge of the Impermanence Palace. At that time, he wouldn't dare to stay in the Huangji family's territory and would use the teleportation array to leave. Ping Han's guess was by chance, but the result was the same. They finally waited for Zhuowen. "Why aren't you saying anything? Are you so guilty that you don't dare to speak?" Gui Yuan said rudely, and the killing intent in his eyes became even more piercingly cold. Zhuowen was very unhappy in his heart. He was blocked by these four people for no reason, and this Gui Yuan even revealed a strong killing intent towards him. "I just don't want to talk. The four of you are here to cause trouble. No matter what I say, will you believe me?" Zhuowen said coldly. Gui Yuan laughed and said, "Believe? Why would I believe that? No matter if you admit it or deny it, you will die today. Even if you weren't the one who killed my brother, you still have to die and be buried with him." As he spoke, Gui Yuan took a step forward. His right hand pinched the fingers of a sword as he chanted a sword technique. Then, the divine sword on his back unsheathed and shot out like a bolt of lightning towards Zhuowen. Gui Yuan followed closely behind. He clenched his right hand into a fist and fiercely punched out. The surface of his fist was filled with terrifying energy. A single punch could probably annihilate anything. Obviously, Gui Yuan didn't hold back at all this time. He came with the goal of killing Zhuowen. Even Lord Hunyuan, who was at the same level as him, probably wouldn't dare to casually take this sword and fist attack head-on. Ping Han stood on the spot. This time, he didn't stop Gui Yuan. He could feel the terrifying anger in Gui Yuan's heart. If he stopped him again, Gui Yuan's impression of him would probably be greatly reduced. Moreover, this white-clothed young man was indeed very suspicious. Although this white-clothed young man's cultivation was slightly low and the possibility of him killing Gui Shan wasn't high, Gui Shan's death was definitely related to this guy. If he died, then so be it. It could be considered as revenge for Gui Shan. The other two core disciples behind Ping Han crossed their arms and looked at Zhuowen mockingly. They were very clear about Gui Yuan's strength. He had the absolute upper hand against Lord Hunyuan, let alone now that he was only facing the Heavenly Lawmaster. Moreover, he was using his full strength. Obviously, this white-clothed young man was doomed, and his death would definitely be extremely miserable. Zhuowen silently looked at the sword and fist attack that were flying towards him. He calmly stood on the spot, motionless. In Gui Yuan's eyes, Zhuowen's action was a performance of being scared silly. This made Gui Yuan despise him. Ding! When the divine sword pierced through the air and landed in front of Zhuowen's eyes like a meteor, it was repelled by a force. It actually deviated a few centimeters from Zhuowen's ear and directly swept past. However, Zhuowen was completely unharmed. What? Gui Yuan's pupils shrank and revealed a shocked expression. Only then did he realize that the thing that repelled his divine sword was also a divine sword. However, this divine sword was surrounded by terrifying lightning and fire energy. At a glance, one could tell that it wasn't an ordinary sword. Zhuowen still stood on the spot, but the thunderfire sword had already shot out and swept towards Gui Yuan's fist. Although Gui Yuan was shocked, he didn't care too much. He was very confident in his fist. Moreover, the young man in front of him was only the heavenly Dao master. Although the thunderfire sword was extraordinary, how much power could it unleash in the hands of this person? Poochie. Unfortunately, Gui Yuan's idea was completely wrong. The moment his fist collided with the thunderfire sword, a large amount of blood immediately spurted out. The thunderfire sword pierced through Gui Yuan's fist without any obstruction, as if it was tofu. Moreover, it drilled out of Gui Yuan's shoulder, and Gui Yuan's entire right hand exploded into a bloody mist. Gui Yuan screamed miserably as he held his right arm that had already exploded and immediately retreated. Unfortunately, the thunderfire sword's speed was too fast. The moment it exploded Gui Yuan's right arm, it turned back and directly pierced into Gui Yuan's forehead. The lightning and fire energy exploded, and Gui Yuan's head exploded. Even his soul was completely annihilated. The battle between the thunderfire sword and Gui Yuan was too short. It was only a breath of time. When Gui Yuan was killed by the thunderfire sword, Ping Han and the other two completely reacted. Gui Yuan died just like that. The two people behind Ping Han muttered with their mouths wide open. Ping Han was also stunned for a moment. However, when he came back to his senses, he flew into a rage. He shouted at Zhuowen, "How dare you kill my Impermanence Palace's people?" Zhuowen's gaze was calm as he looked at Ping Han and said, "You brought people to kill me. Why can't I kill your Impermanence Palace's people? Could it be that only you are allowed to kill me and I'm not allowed to kill you back?" Ping Han's expression was ugly as he said, "Good, very good. You have to pay the price for killing my Impermanence Palace's people." With that said, Ping Han said to the two people behind him, "Attack together and destroy this person." The two people behind Ping Han hesitated, but they did not dare to disobey Ping Han's order. They followed behind Ping Han and rushed towards Zhuowen, forming a triangle. Although Ping Han looked down on Zhuowen in his words, his actions were extremely cautious, especially towards the thunderfire sword manifested by Xiao He. This thunderfire sword could instantly kill Gui Yuan, so it definitely had the strength of a peak Impermanence Palace master. Ping Han did not dare to be careless in the face of such a terrifying divine weapon. As for Zhuowen, Ping Han had already subconsciously ignored him. Zhuowen's aura was too weak. He was only a heavenly Dao master. Chapter 27:19. Ping Han's killing intent. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Ping Han acted decisively, and the two youths behind him followed closely behind. They were like arrows leaving the bow, and their speed was extremely fast. The moment Ping Han made his move, Zhuowen could clearly feel the surrounding temperature plummeting. In an instant, the surrounding air seemed to have solidified, and the cold air was bone-chilling. Bang! The thunderfire sword, which was originally flying out, suddenly froze in mid-air. It was as if there was an invisible wall blocking the thunderfire sword in the transparent void. Zhuowen squinted his eyes. He saw that in the radius of a few feet around the thunderfire sword, there was a dense ice line that formed an ice barrier. It was this barrier that blocked the thunderfire sword. Ping Han's mouth revealed a mocking smile. He stomped his right foot and arrived in front of the ice barrier. He clenched his right fist, and the cold air was biting cold. Immediately after, he smashed it. Bang! 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 The sound of bamboo exploding rang out. Ping Han's fist had surpassed the speed of sound, and the sound of the air exploding rolled out like thunder. Clang! Ping Han's fist smashed onto the Thunder Fire Sword, and the Thunder Fire Sword was actually sent flying. However, the Thunder Fire Sword was trapped in the ice barrier. Therefore, the moment the Thunder Fire Sword was hit, it was immediately smashed to the edge of the ice barrier and bounced back. Immediately after, Ping Han's second punch came, and the Thunder Fire Sword was still smashed to pieces. On the hilt of the Thunder Fire Sword, Xiao Hei's shadow appeared. Xiao Hei was flustered and exasperated. He stared at Ping Han and said loudly, "Little bastard, you have angered this dragon lord. Today, I will kill you, extract your divine soul, and piss on your divine soul every day. I will let you know the consequences of angering this dragon lord." Xiao Hei's words were too despicable, and even Ping Han was greatly angered. He did not expect the weapon spirit of the divine sword in front of him to be so arrogant. He simply did not put him in his eyes. As expected, like master, like servant. A little weapon spirit dares to be so arrogant. Let's see how you will regret it when I catch you. Ping Han snorted and smashed out another punch. The speed of the punch was faster than before, and it was several times faster than the speed of sound. It was extremely powerful and extraordinary. Studio. The ice barrier's trembling didn't last for long. Terrifying cracks actually appeared on its surface. In the end, the ice barrier shattered and collapsed. The terrifying lightning and fire energy inside was like a raging dragon erupting. At this moment, Ping Han's attack had yet to arrive. Seeing the thunderfire energy shooting towards him, his expression changed greatly. However, because the arrow was already narked, he could only brace himself and face the terrifying thunderfire energy head-on. Bang! Ping Han groaned and kept retreating. He looked at Xiao Hei in shock. Obviously, Xiao Hei's strength was still beyond his imagination. She actually broke through his enchantment. She was not simple at all. It's just an artifact spirit. Although it has some strength, how strong can it be? Ping Han snorted coldly. He was not discouraged at all. Instead, he erupted with the most powerful strength in his body and began to attack Xiao Hei without any regard for his life. The two disciples behind Ping Han also followed closely behind. They used all of their skills to help Ping Han counterattack Xiao Hei. Ping Han was worthy of being the #1 core disciple of Impermanence Palace. His cultivation was infinitely close to the second step of Tao validation. His strength was even stronger than the average peak primordial chaos master. Furthermore, Ping Han possessed a lot of abilities. If he were to unleash his full strength, he would be on par with Xiao Hei. However, Ping Han had the help of his two junior brothers, so he was able to suppress Xiao Hei in one fell swoop. Even though Xiao Hei was cursing, Ping Han still had no intention of fighting Xiao Hei alone. Of course, Xiao Hei's curses were too harsh. She had almost cursed 18 generations of Ping Han's ancestors. Although Ping Han had good self-restraint, after hearing Xiao Hei's obscenities, he was still speechless. He wanted nothing more than to tear this artifact spirit's mouth apart and make him shut up quickly. Zhuoan stood aside silently and watched the battle. He did not intend to take action. The reason why he did not take action was that he wanted to see Xiao Hei's results during this period. Previously, Xiao Hei had shamelessly asked for 30% of the resources that Zhuoan had obtained from the Temporal Temple. With so many resources, how strong had Xiao Hei become? Now that he was watching the battle, Zhuoan had a deeper understanding of Xiao Hei's strength. Currently, Xiao Hei's strength should be stronger than an ordinary peak primordial chaos master and should be on par with Ping Han. If Xiao Hei could obtain more materials, Zhuoan believed that this guy would have more than enough to enter the second step of Tao validation. However, he also knew that Xiao Hei would definitely need to consume a lot of resources to advance to the second step of Tao validation. The amount of resources needed would definitely be dozens of times more than what Xiao Hei had used to advance to the second step of Tao validation. At this moment, Ping Han was very proud. He had completely suppressed this artifact spirit. According to his estimation, this abominable artifact spirit should be defeated within 100 moves. When the time came for him to capture this artifact spirit, he would give this artifact spirit special treatment. At the same time, Ping Han's gaze fell on the young man in white who was watching the battle not far away. He wanted to see the look of shock and fear on the young man's face. In Ping Han's opinion, the Thunderfire Sword was the strongest trump card of the young man in white. Since he was about to capture the Thunderfire Sword, what else could the young man rely on? When the time came, he would be at Ping Han's disposal. However, the moment Ping Han's gaze fell on the young man in white, he frowned slightly. This was because he saw that the young man in white did not look as frightened as he had expected. The young man in white's face was extremely calm from beginning to end. He was like a pool of water in an ancient well, without the slightest ripple. Is this guy putting on an act? The ultimate trump card is clearly in my hands, yet he can still pretend to be so calm. His self-esteem is quite strong. However, when I completely capture this sword later, will he still be so calm? Ping Han sneered in his heart. He had made up his mind that the young man in white was just putting on an act. Zhuoan, you still have a chance to live. If you follow us back to the Impermanence Palace and wait for the Punishment Hall of the Impermanence Palace to deal with you, you may still have a chance to live. You've already lost. If you refuse to admit defeat, you may be killed on the spot. It's useless even if you beg for mercy, Ping Han could not help but say. Zhuoan looked at Ping Han indifferently and said, you haven't won yet, and you think you can capture me? You think too highly of yourself. Ping Han's eyes flashed with anger. He snorted coldly and no longer spoke. However, the killing intent in his eyes became more intense and terrifying. Chapter 2720. True Strength. Damn, this son of a B*TCH. He can't beat me, so he bullies me with numbers. This is disgusting. Does he really think that I don't have any helpers? Xiao He was so angry that his liver hurt. He looked at Zhuoan and shouted, boy, what are you waiting for? Where are the Blood Immortal Sword and the Death Sacrifice Sword? Xiao He's words shocked Ping Han and the other two, but they soon calmed down. They thought that the weapon spirit of the Thunder Fire Sword was just bluffing. Puff, puff. Suddenly, two streams of blood shot out, followed by two blood-curdling screams. Ping Han was shocked. He quickly looked to his sides and saw that both of his junior brothers had lost an arm. Blood gushed out as if it could not be stopped. Their appearance was extremely miserable. Ping Han also saw the real culprit who cut off his two junior brothers. It was two divine swords. One of the divine swords shone with bloody light, while the other was surrounded by death chi. They were both extraordinary. Although the aura of these two divine swords was not as strong as the Thunder Fire Sword, they were still divine weapons of primordial origin master. From their aura, it could be seen that the power of these two divine swords was comparable to that of a peak primordial origin master. You have divine weapons of primordial origin master? How can one person control so many divine weapons of primordial origin master? Ping Han was shocked and in disbelief. He also had a primordial level god artifact, but to drive it, he needed to use all of his consciousness to drive the primordial level god artifact. As for driving two divine weapons of primordial origin master, his divine sense could not withstand it. In his opinion, primordial origin master could not drive two divine weapons of primordial origin master at the same time, let alone three. But the white-clothed youth in front of him did it. Was this guy really the heavenly law master? Although Ping Han was shocked, it was not the time for him to be shocked because the Thunder Fire Sword had led the Blood Immortal Sword and the Death Sacrifice Sword over. After going through Xiao He's conditions, the Blood Immortal Sword and the Death Sacrifice Sword had improved significantly. At the same time, the two divine swords had become this guy's loyal subordinates. They would obey Xiao He's orders without question. Bang bang bang. In an instant, the three divine swords formed a triangular formation, sealing off all of Ping Han's blind spots. Sword shadows surrounded Ping Han like a storm, and Ping Han himself became the core of the sword shadow storm, trapped within. For a moment, Ping Han fell into an absolute disadvantage. The attacks of the three divine swords were too fierce, suppressing Ping Han to the point where he was covered in cuts and bruises. Poochie. Finally, Ping Han struggled to break free from the encirclement. He spat out a mouthful of blood, and his face was pale. The aura on his body was extremely weak. You are truly despicable. You killed the people of my impermanence palace. You will pay the debt of blood with blood. You will never have peace. Ping Han spat out another mouthful of blood. After saying these words, he crushed the escape talisman that he had prepared long ago. He turned into a streamer and rushed into the distance. Unfortunately, Zhuowen was always on guard against Ping Han's movements. At this moment, seeing Ping Han crush the escape talisman, he was able to determine the direction in which Ping Han wanted to leave in advance, and blocked in front of Ping Han. A mere heavenly law master, relying on 3 divine artifacts of the origin, dares to block in front of me? You are simply courting death. When Ping Han saw that Zhuowen had stopped him, he felt relieved and a trace of disdain rose in his heart. He suddenly punched out, intending to kill the white-clothed youth in front of him with one blow. Zhuowen stood calmly in the same place, looking at Ping Han's fist that was getting closer and closer. His eyes flashed like lightning, and he also punched out. This punch did not use the power of the Pangu sacred body, but the power of his true body. He wanted to see if the true body of the heavenly law master could really fight against the master of the origin. When Zhuowen first broke through, he felt that his true body was completely different from the ordinary heavenly law masters. Moreover, his strength was much stronger than the ordinary heavenly law masters. Boom! Zhuowen directly collided with Ping Han. Terrifying energy ripples spread out, and the surrounding starry sky rippled with dense ripples. Zhuowen snorted and retreated dozens of steps. Ping Han's body swayed, and after he stabilized himself, he looked at the white-clothed youth in front of him in shock. In his opinion, his punch should be enough to kill the white-clothed youth in front of him, who was merely the heavenly law master. However, the fact was that the white-clothed youth in front of him was not killed by him, but blocked his attack. Moreover, the white-clothed youth only retreated dozens of steps, as if he was not injured at all. Ping Han felt that it was incredible. The white-clothed youth in front of him was much weaker than him. Not only did the white-clothed youth block his attack, but he was also not injured. This was too unexpected. Zhuowen steadied himself, but his eyes were shining. He knew that the strength of his true body was indeed comparable to that of the ordinary master of the origin. As for Ping Han's attack, it was indeed powerful. If Zhuowen's Pangu sacred body was not powerful, Zhuowen might have been seriously injured by the attack just now. Go to hell! Ping Han's eyes were gloomy. He knew that he had underestimated the white-clothed youth in front of him. He had used all his skills in this attack, and he was determined to kill this youth completely. Zhuowen also punched out again. This time, he did not use the strength of his true body, but the strength of his Pangu sacred body. Since he had already tested the strength of his true body and had a general understanding of it, he naturally would not use it again. Instead, he planned to use his Pangu sacred body to end the battle quickly. When Ping Han's fist collided with Zhuowen's fist again, Ping Han's expression changed. He could feel a suffocating power coming from the fist in front of him. This force was like an avalanche, pouring into Ping Han's fist. Ping Han could clearly feel that this power had caused his arm to be twisted and fractured. Furthermore, it was bent in an irregular manner. Then, his arm exploded inch by inch, turning into a bloody mist. A sense of helplessness rose in Ping Han's heart. This force was so terrifying that he could not resist it at all. Ping Han wanted to retreat and avoid this terrifying power, but unfortunately, after that power destroyed his arm, it was like a hot knife through butter, directly entering his body. Bang! 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 Bursts of bloody mist burst out from Ping Han's body. Every time a burst of bloody mist burst out, Ping Han took a step back. He took dozens of steps back, and dozens of horrible wounds appeared on his body. The bloody wounds looked very terrifying. Ping Han suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. His body was stiff, and he was almost beaten to death. Chapter 27-21. Fu Qi Ping Han's entire body trembled as the threat of death assaulted him, and he shouted loudly, "You can't kill me. Once you kill me, the palace master of Impermanence Palace, Fu Qi, will know. He'll immediately know who killed me. You're simply courting death by doing this." Unfortunately, Ping Han's words were completely useless against Zhuowen. Zhuowen's expression was cold and indifferent as he smashed his fist towards the center of Ping Han's forehead with unstoppable force. However, when his fist force hit Ping Han's forehead, a blood-red mark appeared on Ping Han's forehead. The blood-red mark swiftly became clear, and then it erupted with a force that wasn't inferior to Ping Han's and suddenly blasted towards Zhuowen. Rumble. Thunder rumbled. Zhuowen felt as if his fist had struck a hard rock, and he couldn't help but retreat a few hundred meters. He gazed solemnly at the blood-red mark that flashed out from the center of Ping Han's forehead. The blood-red mark directly wriggled in the starry sky and finally transformed into an old man over the age of 60. The old man's gaze was cold, and he looked at Zhuowen with extreme hostility. "Who are you? You dared to touch the successor of my impermanence palace. Could it be that you want to go against my impermanence palace?" Ping Han greets the palace master. Ping Han was delighted and hurriedly knelt down on one knee. The old man that was formed from the blood-red mark was the palace master of Impermanence Palace, Fu Qi. Fu Qi nodded to Ping Han, and then he looked at Zhuowen and said in a cold voice, "I'll give you a chance now. Become Ping Han's servant, and I'll consider sparing your life." Zhuowen's eyes narrowed, and he said coldly, "You're just a soul, yet you're actually so arrogant. Not to mention that you're just a soul, I wouldn't be afraid even if your main body came here personally." Sure enough, as soon as Zhuowen spoke, Fu Qi's expression turned cold, and he said coldly, "Since you're courting death, then I'll fulfill your wish." As he spoke, Fu Qi's image took a step forward, and his right hand formed a claw that suddenly grabbed towards Zhuowen. Needless to say, Fu Qi was worthy of being an expert at the second step of the Dao validation realm. She was merely a strand of her nascent soul, yet her attack was much more terrifying than Ping Han's. Ping Han's eyes were filled with fervor as he watched Fu Qi attack. He knew that no matter how heaven-defying the white-clothed young man was, it was impossible for him to be a match for Fu Qi. One had to know that second-step Dao validation experts were existences that could reach the heavens in his eyes. Even if it was only a strand of Fu Qi's soul, her strength was far above his, so killing Zhuowen wasn't a problem at all. Zhuowen sneered in his heart. He had no intention of tangling with Fu Qi's principal spirit at all. Therefore, he immediately used his intent to create a Qi blade. Zhuowen's right hand was like a blade, and the surface of the blade was covered with a layer of extremely mysterious and powerful light. This was the light of the sky-opening blade. Puchi. Zhuowen suddenly slashed out and struck Fu Qi's body. Fu Qi sneered, looking down on Zhuowen's move at all. However, the moment she came into contact with the sky-opening blade, her nascent soul actually emitted white smoke, and she even let out a miserable cry. A huge wound was actually cut open on her body. Fu Qi's image immediately flew back. After retreating to a safe distance, she looked at Zhuowen in surprise. The wound on his chest had gradually healed, but Fu Qi's image was much dimmer than before. Obviously, the attack just now had consumed a lot of her energy. Ping Han was dumbfounded as he watched this scene in disbelief. After all, Fu Qi was an expert at the second step of the Dao validation realm. Even if she was only a nascent soul, her strength was monstrous. However, she was actually easily defeated by this white-clothed young man. Was this really the heavenly Dao master? Thinking of this, Ping Han's heart thumped. He couldn't help but start to retreat. He already had the intention to retreat. The strength of the white-clothed young man in front of him was beyond his imagination. He didn't have much confidence in Fu Qi's nascent soul. Unfortunately, Xiao He led the Blood Immortal Sword and the Sacrificial Death Sword to block Ping Han's path. Moreover, Xiao He ruthlessly mocked Ping Han for being a coward. This made Ping Han so angry that he was fuming, but he couldn't do anything. Xiao He's strength was already above his with the Blood Immortal Sword and the Sacrificial Death Sword. She could firmly suppress him, so he didn't dare to act rashly. Zhuowen continued to rush forward in a spurt of energy. In an instant, he got close to Fu Qi and used the sky-opening blade again, easily tearing Fu Qi's nascent soul apart. After repeating this 3 times, Fu Qi's nascent soul was almost transparent. Zhuowen knew that even if he didn't do anything, this trace of Fu Qi's nascent soul would gradually dissipate. Fu Qi was extremely unwilling. He stared coldly at Zhuowen and said, "Ant, if you dare to kill Ping Han, you will become an enemy of my impermanence palace. When this old man returns, I will kill you even if I have to go to heaven or hell." Zhuowen sneered and ignored Fu Qi. Instead, he walked toward Ping Han. Ping Han was so scared that he hurriedly retreated. Unfortunately, Xiao He led the Blood Immortal Sword and the Sacrificial Death Sword to block Ping Han's path. Moreover, Xiao He was very despicable. He kept harassing Ping Han, making Ping Han unable to bear it. Zhuowen grabbed Ping Han casually and easily held him in the palm of his hand. Ping Han wanted to resist, but the power of Zhuowen's Pangu sacred body was too terrifying. Ping Han was easily held in his hand like a chicken, unable to move. "Do you really dare to kill Ping Han? If you let Ping Han go, my impermanence palace will let bygones be bygones." Fu Qi was a little anxious and hurriedly said. Zhuowen sneered and said, "Now that Ping Han's life is in my hands, shouldn't you be speaking to me in a begging tone? Even now, you are still so high and mighty. Do you really think that I am a servant of your impermanence palace?" After saying that, Zhuowen exerted force with his right hand. The power of the 3 stars Pangu sacred body exploded. Immediately, Ping Han's neck bent and his vitality was cut off. His divine soul was destroyed. Remember this. No matter who you are or where you are, I, Fu Qi, swear that I'll find you and completely annihilate you. Moreover, I, Fu Qi, won't let off anyone related to you. Fu Qi was flustered and exasperated. He did not expect that Zhuowen would really kill Ping Han and kill him in front of him. This was a direct slap to his face. Zhuowen could not be bothered with Fu Qi. With a wave of his sleeve, he completely erased Fu Qi's remaining primordial spirit. "It's time to enter the capital of the Huangji family and have a look." Zhuowen's eyes were calm. He knew that he could not stay in the Huangji family's territory any longer and had to leave as soon as possible. There were also cultivators guarding the gate of the capital. Although Zhuowen did not have a pass, he easily entered the capital of the Huangji family after paying 2 high-grade Heavenly Way origin crystals. However, the moment Zhuowen entered the capital, he frowned because he found that there was a faint aura in the capital that he was subconsciously familiar with. This aura was very similar to the Zhurong venomous insect, but it was also different. Could it be that there are other ancestral sorcerers' venomous insects in the capital? Chapter 27-22. Huang Lin. In the Great Brahma domain of the 8 major heavens, an extremely luxurious spaceship stopped near the old site of the Wen Shui Palace. A group of people stood on the deck of the flying ship. The person in the lead was a man with a dignified expression, and an old man with a glowing face stood by his side. The dignified man was the 3rd master of the Huang Ji clan, Huang Lin, who'd come to the 8 heavens from the Impermanence Pier. The old man standing by Huang Lin's side was the master of Impermanence Palace, Fu Qi. 3rd Prince Huang Zi's aura remains here. Moreover, the auras of Elder Bai and Elder Wu who followed Huang Zi are here as well. At the same time, I sense Zuda's aura not too far away. Huang Lin frowned slightly as he looked around the starry sky and spoke in a low voice. Fu Qi carefully looked along Huang Lin's gaze towards the surroundings, and then he said rather cautiously, "My lord, besides that, I sensed a strand of terrifying killing intent. This killing intent is extremely terrifying, and even I feel horrified by it." Fu Qi's heart shook slightly. Especially when he sensed the surging killing intent in the surroundings, his expression was unsightly. The killing intent was too pure, and its destructive force was too great. He couldn't help but consider if he would be able to resist such a powerful killing intent. Huang Lin's expression was extremely solemn as well. He said in a low voice, "This killing intent is terrifying indeed." However, Huang Zi and the other 2 weren't killed by the owner of this killing intent. Instead, the killing intent is the densest where Zuda's aura is. Zuda probably died to this killing intent. "My lord, did you sense the murderer's aura?" asked Fu Qi. Huang Lin shook his head and said, "I'm guessing that the source of this killing intent is a ferocious object. Because its killing intent is too terrifying, it has concealed the murderer's aura. I can only vaguely sense a trace of its aura. It seems to be very weak, And it's merely at the extreme realm of life and death. Huang Lin couldn't help but shake his head and laugh when he spoke up to this point. He felt that it was absurd to come to such a conclusion, and he thought to himself that he'd probably been misled by this terrifying killing intent. Fu Qi couldn't help but laugh as well. Clearly, he didn't think that the murderer was at the extreme realm of life and death. After all, the extreme realm of life and death was an ant that could be casually crushed to death. How could such an ant have the strength to kill 4 Dao-confirming powerhouses, including Zhu De? This was simply impossible. Seems like the one who killed Huang Ziyi and Yuan Hui is the same person. Who is it that dared to disregard our Huangji clan and kill our people? Huang Lin said angrily. In Huang Lin's opinion, Huang Ziyi's death didn't matter. After all, he was just a good-for-nothing with mediocre talent. His death wouldn't affect the Huangji aristocratic family at all. However, Zhu De was the master of destiny and was already a cornerstone of the Huangji aristocratic family. In addition, Master Yuan Hui was a true array Dao expert. The death of these 2 people was definitely a huge loss to the Huangji aristocratic family. No matter who it was, Huang Lin had to find the culprit and make him pay with blood. Fu Qi said carefully, "My lord, the 8 heavens are not peaceful now. It is said that the leader of the demon race, Eastern Emperor Tai, has appeared and has already subdued 5 heavens. He has begun to integrate them into the demon realm. Moreover, Eastern Emperor Tai has a 9-story demon pagoda, which is filled with the corpses of great magi. These great magi were all 3rd-step Dao confirming mighty figures when they were alive. After death, their corpses were refined into corpse puppets. Although their strength can't be compared to when they were alive, their physical bodies are powerful. They are not comparable to ordinary 2nd-step Dao confirming cultivators. Do you think the person who killed Master Yuan Hui and the others is from the demon realm?" Huang Lin's expression changed slightly. Huang Lin didn't know about the formation of the monster realm until he came to the 8 heavens, especially Donghuang Tai, who was an extremely ancient existence. He was an old monster who had survived in the brilliant era of the untainted heavenly realm. It might not be the demon realm. It might be more likely that it's an expert from the prehistoric heavenly realm. After all, Master Yuan Hui came to seal the passage to the prehistoric heavenly realm. However, for some reason, the seal of the passage was forcefully broken. Now, the living beings of the prehistoric heavenly realm have also occupied 2 heavens. The Great Brahma heavenly realm is the last unoccupied heavenly realm. At this point, Huang Lin's eyes were filled with worry. Regardless of whether it was the demon race or the living beings of the prehistoric heavenly realm, they were actually incompatible with the human race. He was worried that the demon race would join forces with the prehistoric heavenly realm to attack the human race. If that was the case, he was worried that the human race would not be able to withstand the joint attack of the demon race and the prehistoric heavenly realm. Just as Huang Lin and Fu Qi were chatting casually, Huang Lin noticed that Fu Qi's expression was strange. His body was trembling slightly, as if he was forcefully suppressing the anger in his heart. "Palace Master Fu, what's wrong?" Huang Lin asked in surprise. Fu Qi took a deep breath and said solemnly, "Lord Huang Lin, the 2nd successor of the Impermanence Palace that I personally appointed has been killed." Huang Lin was surprised. His gaze towards Fu Qi was tinged with a trace of pity. It had to be said that Fu Qi was very unlucky. The Impermanence Palace Master was the 1st successor that Fu Qi had personally appointed. He was also Fu Qi's biological son. He had been killed in the 8 heavens. This news had already made Fu Qi so angry that he wanted to kill someone. However, now that Fu Qi had left the Impermanence Palace and come to the 8 heavens, the 2nd successor that he had personally appointed had also unfortunately been killed. The deaths of the 2 successors had dealt a huge blow to Fu Qi. "Palace Master Fu, do you know who killed your successor?" Huang Lin asked. "It's a young man in white. This young man has 3 primordial chaos-grade divine artifacts. Moreover, the strange thing is that this person is only the heavenly Dao Master, but is extremely powerful. He actually killed Ping Han with a single punch," Fu Qi said with a frown. After all, Fu Qi had left a trace of his primordial spirit in Ping Han's body. After Zhuoan destroyed his primordial spirit, he knew immediately. Moreover, through the connection of the primordial spirit, he knew everything that had happened. Moreover, this kid killed someone not far from the entrance of the Huangji clan's capital. He's truly too detestable. Fu Qi spoke fiercely. Huang Lin's gaze was cold as well, and he said, "How arrogant. He actually dared to kill someone at the entrance of my Huangji clan. He doesn't take my Huangji clan seriously at all. Once we return, investigate this kid thoroughly. Once we capture him, we definitely won't let him off." Fu Qi was delighted and hurriedly bowed towards Huang Lin. He knew that Huang Lin was speaking to him. Since Huang Lin had spoken, then it meant that Huang Lin would represent the Huangji clan to interfere in this matter. With the help of the Huangji clan, Fu Qi knew that the white-clothed young man wouldn't be able to hide. "Thank you, Lord Huang Lin." Fu Qi hurriedly thanked him. Huang Lin waved his hand and said, "Your Impermanence Palace is a vassal of my Huangji clan after all. Since something has happened to your Impermanence Palace, then my Huangji clan will naturally not sit idly by. We'll return together once we've gathered all the auras. At that time, my Huangji clan will assist you in capturing the murderer." Chapter 27-23. A ruthless woman. After entering the capital of the Huangji clan, Zhuoan was dazzled by the prosperity of this gigantic city. It had to be said that the Huangji family was indeed willing to spend money. They were actually able to build such a huge city. Moreover, they had even set up such a flawless spirit formation outside the city. The streets inside were so spacious that they did not look like streets but more like football fields. However, even such a large street was bustling with people. It was extremely lively and crowded. "Is that aura coming from there?" Zhuoan narrowed his eyes and cast his gaze to the front. He followed his senses and kept rushing forward at an extremely fast speed. He was very excited. His Pangu sacred body had been promoted to the peak of the 3-star level, and he increasingly felt that it would not be easy for him to promote his Pangu sacred body. Especially now that he was promoting from the peak of the 3-star level to the 4-star level, he felt that no matter how many heavenly law origin crystals he used, he would not be able to successfully promote to the 4-star level. It was not a matter of the amount of energy, but a matter of the quality of the energy. After all, the 3-star level and the 4-star level were major realms apart. Zhuoan knew that if he wanted to successfully promote, he had to use the ancestral wizard venomous insects. The Pangu sacred body needed to be integrated with the 12 ancestral wizard venomous insects to finally achieve the perfect Pangu sacred body. Zhuoan's current Pangu sacred body was not complete. He had only integrated with the Zhurong venomous insect. If he wanted to integrate the perfect Pangu sacred body, he had to collect the remaining 11 ancestral wizard venomous insects. Now, Zhuoan actually sensed the aura of the ancestral wizard venomous insects in the capital of the Huangji clan. How could he not be excited and lose control of himself? After all, if he could get another ancestral wizard venomous insect, his Pangu sacred body could easily be promoted to the 4-star level. Zhuoan walked all the way along the street in front of him and finally came to the end. He stopped in front of a huge palace. The palace that appeared in front of Zhuoan covered a vast area, occupying 1/10 of the area of this huge city. From afar, it looked like a city within a city. Zhuoan also discovered that the surface of the inner city was also overflowing with light and color. The array formations and restrictions set up here were even more strict and terrifying than the outer city. Moreover, the security here was even tighter and denser. Powerful cultivators could be seen patrolling the surroundings. Moreover, Zhuoan's divine sense could sense that there were many cultivators with extremely powerful auras in the city. He was sure that these cultivators were all experts above the second step of Dao validation. Zhuoan took a step forward and was about to step into the inner city when he was immediately stopped by 2 cultivators at the city gate. Zhuoan looked at the 2 cultivators guarding the door in surprise because he found that the 2 cultivators guarding the door were actually Primordial Chaos Lord. Even the gatekeepers were Lord Primordial Chaos. From this, one could see how huge the power within the city was. If you don't have the command token bestowed by the Huangji clan, then please wait. One of the guarding cultivators could be considered to be polite, and he stopped Zhuowen and spoke indifferently. Zhuowen stopped and looked at the bustling scene inside the city gate. He also calmed down. It seemed that the ancestral witch Jiyu he sensed was inside the Huangji clan. Then why can she go in? Zhuowen suddenly pointed at a woman who had caught up from behind and asked indifferently. The woman was wearing a pale yellow cheongsam with a pattern of 2 crossed sabers on the chest of the cheongsam. There was a trace of arrogance on her pretty face. The woman obviously heard Zhuowen's question. She could not help but turn around and look at Zhuowen behind her with disdain. She sneered and ridiculed. "Who do you think you are? I'm a disciple of the Huangji clan. Who do you think you are? How dare you compare yourself to me?" Zhuowen just looked at the woman coldly. He could see from the attitude of the guards at the city gate that the woman should not have a high status in the Huangji clan. She was probably just the most ordinary disciple. Otherwise, the guards would definitely reveal a respectful expression. However, it was exactly the opposite. The guards seemed to be very calm and did not reveal any other unusual expressions when facing the woman. When the woman saw Zhuowen looking on coldly and indifferently, her arrogant expression instantly turned into anger. In the woman's eyes, the white-clothed young man before her was really too ordinary. Even the aura on his body was only that of the heavenly Tao master, which was a level lower than her. As for his status, it was different. This fellow was definitely a nobody. On the other hand, she was a disciple of the Huangji clan. Although she was only an ordinary disciple, at least she had the name of the Huangji clan. Outside the city, she was very glorious and everyone praised and flattered her. However, this ordinary young man before her actually dared to look at her with such an expression. It really made her furious and extremely displeased. It was precisely because of the extreme displeasure in her heart that the woman could not help but want to teach Zhuowen a lesson. "You don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. What qualifications do your dog eyes have to look at me? Cripple your own eyes right now and I won't pursue the matter. After that, scram. I'm annoyed just by looking at you." The woman did not give up. Zhuowen could not be bothered with the woman. Since the ancestral sorcerer's Jiyu worm was inside the Huangji clan, it was definitely impossible for him to enter the Huangji clan and obtain the ancestral sorcerer's Jiyu worm with his current cultivation. Now, he planned to leave the city within the city and consider a countermeasure before deciding whether to take the risk and enter the Huangji clan. When he thought of this, Zhuowen turned around and intended to leave. "Where are you going? I think you're just courting death. Since you're not crippling your own dog eyes, I'll help you. After that, I'll break your dog legs, you dog slave." When she saw that Zhuowen ignored her and turned around to leave, the woman was so angry that she trembled. She stomped her foot and actually charged towards Zhuowen and brazenly attacked him. The 2 guards at the city gate frowned slightly. They felt that the woman's unwillingness to give up was a little too much. However, they were only guards and had no right to interfere with the affairs of the Huangji clan's disciples. Moreover, Zhuowen was not related to them in any way. Naturally, they would not attack a young man that they did not know. Zhuowen's gaze was cold. This woman was really rude and unreasonable. He, Zhuowen, did not want to cause trouble, so he simply ignored this woman. This woman actually took the initiative to look for trouble and even said such ruthless words. She was looking for trouble. No matter how good Zhuowen's temper was, he was still a little angry in his heart. The woman's speed was extremely fast. In an instant, she was behind Zhuowen. Her right hand formed a palm and whizzed out. She directly blasted towards Zhuowen's back. At the same time, the woman's left index finger and middle finger separated. Like an eagle's claw, they stretched out from the back of Zhuowen's head and directly gouged out Zhuowen's eyeballs. She wanted to cripple Zhuowen's eyes. The woman's right leg was like a whip that shot towards Zhuowen's legs. She wanted to use this opportunity to completely cripple Zhuowen's legs. One had to admit that the woman was really ruthless. Chapter 27-24 Chen Zhuowen's eyes flashed with murderous intent when he saw the woman's move. He stopped in place and reached out with his right hand like a snake to wrap around the woman's hands. At the same time, he kicked his right leg to meet the woman's whip kick. Crack! Zhuo Wen's right hand wrapped around the woman's hands and tightened. He actually managed to bind the woman's hands. At the same time, his leg collided with the woman's whip leg. Immediately, the clear sound of bones breaking rang out. With a clear scream, the woman flew backward like a falling leaf. Her hands were twisted and almost crippled. The woman's right leg was the most miserable. After being hit by Zhuowen, it exploded into a cloud of blood and disappeared. Zhuowen didn't even look at the woman who had been crippled by him. He just turned around and left. Just now, he secretly used a part of the power of the Pangu sacred body to cripple the woman's hands and right leg. Unless he used a divine pill refined from a second-step Dao validation divine medicine, it would be very difficult for the woman's broken limbs to recover. This woman was just an ordinary disciple of the Huangji clan. It was impossible for the Huangji clan to take out such a precious thing to restore her body. Wait, you beat up someone from the Huangji clan. Are you going to leave just like that? The cultivators guarding the gate were completely stunned. They didn't expect that Zhuowen, who was only the heavenly Dao master, could easily cripple the woman. When they came back to their senses, they immediately called out to Zhuowen. You want to avenge her? Zhuowen turned around and looked at the two guards with extreme hostility. The two guards felt the aura that suddenly escaped from Zhuowen's body and their hearts trembled. The cultivator in front of them was only the heavenly Dao master, but at that moment, he gave them an unbearable sense of fear. Was this really a feeling that a heavenly Dao master could give off? Although they knew that the woman was in the wrong first, they couldn't ignore the fact that she was a disciple of the Huangji clan and had been crippled by an outsider in front of the Huangji clan. Fellow brother, you may have misunderstood. We are not here to avenge this woman. Rather, you should not have been so heavy-handed, one of the gatekeepers said solemnly. She was the one who wanted to cripple me. I was just defending myself. She deserved to be beaten up like this, Zhuowen said calmly. Brother, please come with me to the Hall of Penal Law of the Huangji clan. I will report this matter to the elders of the Hall of Penal Law. At that time, the elders of the Hall of Penal Law will give you justice. However, if you leave now, regardless of whether you're in the wrong or not, the Huangji clan will still issue an arrest warrant for you. At that time, even if you are right, you will have no reason to say anything. The Huangji aristocratic family will indiscriminately capture you and kill you, the gatekeeper said rather sincerely. Zhuowen's eyes flashed and he agreed to the cultivator's suggestion. Of course, a large part of the reason why he agreed was because he wanted to enter the city within the city to take a look. He wanted to sense the location of the ancestral shaman Jiyu. Perhaps he had a certain chance of obtaining the ancestral shaman Jiyu. As long as he obtained the ancestral shaman Jiyu and refined it, his Pangu sacred body would undergo a transformation and be promoted to a 4-star level. Once the Pangu sacred body was promoted to a 4-star level, Zhuowen knew that there were not many people in the Huangji clan who could threaten his life. The only ones who could threaten him were those old monsters who had not appeared for a long time. These old monsters had been in seclusion all year round to pursue a more powerful realm. As long as Zhuowen did not make too much trouble, they should not come out easily. Of course, even if they came out, Zhuowen was not afraid. As long as he left the capital city, with the speed of the space-time roulette, even a third-step Dao validation cultivator might not be able to catch up with him. After Zhuowen agreed, the gatekeeper heaved a sigh of relief even though the white-robed young man before him was only a heavenly Dao master. Although the white-robed young man was only a white-robed young man, for some reason, he felt an extremely strong sense of crisis. After all, the woman was a Daoyuan master, but she had been crippled by this person with a single move. It could be seen that this person's strength was at least at the level of Hunyuan master. In fact, he did not want to casually fight against such an opponent. This matter had nothing to do with him, so it was naturally best to leave it to the Hall of Penal Law. Brother, please follow me. The cultivator nodded gratefully at Zhuowen, carried the woman on his shoulder, and led the way for Zhuowen. You're dead. How dare you hit me so hard? As long as you dare to enter the Hall of Penal Law, there will be no return. You'll definitely die. The woman grimaced in pain, but she did not faint in the end. Instead, she glared at Zhuowen and kept cursing. She was in the right and did not spare him. You can continue to talk, and I can continue to attack you. You choose. Zhuoan was leisurely, but the killing intent in his eyes became more and more terrifying. The woman's heart trembled, and her face revealed an embarrassed expression, but she stopped cursing. Obviously, she was really afraid of Zhuoan. The cultivator guarding the gate carried the woman and walked in front, while Zhuoan walked behind. They passed through the city within the city, and their strange combination naturally attracted the attention of many passing cultivators, causing them to discuss animatedly. The woman's face was embarrassed. She saw many disciples she knew, and they were snickering not far away. This made the woman feel ashamed and angry, and her hatred for Zhuoan deepened. In the process of walking to the Hall of Penal Law, Zhuoan chatted with the gatekeeper, and he found out that the gatekeeper's name was Chen Fa. The woman who was crippled by him was called Chun Dan, and she was only an ordinary disciple of the Huangji family. She was considered to be at the bottom of the Huangji family. After knowing Chun Dan's identity, Zhuoan was not worried about his situation. With Chen Fa speaking up for him, he felt that the Hall of Penal Law would still handle it impartially. When the time came, he would also have to look for traces of the ancestral witch-Jiyu worm in the inner city. As he walked towards the Hall of Penal Law, Zhuoan found that the aura of the ancestral witch-Jiyu worm was getting closer and closer to him. This made Zhuoan very surprised. This meant that the ancestral witch-Jiyu worm he sensed was near the Hall of Penal Law. After a while, Chen Fa led Zhuoan to the Hall of Penal Law. The color of the Hall of Penal Law's buildings was cold, and it emitted a serious and cold atmosphere. It gave people a cold feeling. Chen Fa, why are you not guarding the door? What are you doing in the Hall of Penal Law? A man dressed in black walked out of the Hall of Penal Law. When he saw Chen Fa walking towards him, he could not help but ask in surprise. Zhu Rong, is the elder of the Hall of Penal Law here? I have an urgent matter that requires his judgment. Chen Fa looked at the man in black in surprise. The man named Zhu Rong frowned and hesitated for a moment before saying, "The elder is not here. The Vice Hall Master is inside. You can go in and look for him. The Vice Hall Master is inside." Chen Fa frowned, and a hint of worry appeared in his eyes. "Since the elder is not here, then I'll wait first. I'll come back later." Chapter 27-25. Zhu Ling hearing the cold voice from the Hall of Penal Law, Chen Fa's expression changed slightly. His eyes were cold, but he still respectfully cupped his hands towards the Hall of Penal Law and said, "Chen Fa greets the Vice Hall Master." Zhu Rong also hurriedly bowed and greeted the Deputy Hall Master. Then, he lowered his head submissively and did not dare to breathe loudly. Zhuoan stood where he was and raised his head to look at the Hall of Penal Law. A middle-aged man with a round and oily face slowly walked out. This middle-aged man was so bloated that he was equivalent to two people. As he walked, he swayed as if he would fall forward at any time. The middle-aged man was very satisfied with Zhu Rong and Chen Fa's attitude. His narrowed eyes swept over them, and his gaze fell on Zhuoan, who was behind Chen Fa. When he saw that Zhuoan was actually standing upright and did not bow like Chen Fa and Zhu Rong, he was displeased. He pointed at Zhuoan and said, "Which disciple of the Huangji clan are you? Why haven't I seen you before?" Chen Fa hurriedly said, "Vice Hall Master, this person isn't a disciple of my Huangji clan." Chen Fa, you've got guts. You actually dared to bring someone who isn't a disciple of my Huangji clan in. Do you think you're very amazing? Bring in any Tom, Dick, or Harry. The middle-aged man raised his voice a lot, like a loudspeaker. It was loud and piercing to the ears, and his words were also very unpleasant. Zhuoan looked on coldly from the side, while the female Chun Dan on Chen Fa's shoulder saw that the Vice Hall Master was targeting Zhuoan, and immediately revealed a happy expression. She knew that the white-clothed youth in front of her had offended the Vice Hall Master. With the Vice Hall Master's vengeful personality, this fellow would definitely suffer. Vice Hall Master, this person didn't distinguish between right and wrong. He stopped my daughter at the city gate. He wanted to molest me because of my beauty. I resisted, but he used despicable means to beat me up. This person is too much. Vice Hall Master, please help me. Chun Dan acted according to the situation. She hurriedly complained that she had been wronged and pushed all the blame and responsibility onto Zhuowen. Sure enough, when the middle-aged man saw the injuries on Chun Dan's body, his eyes became cold and gloomy. A murderous intent like a storm enveloped Zhuowen's entire body. Chen Fa felt a chill in his heart. He hurriedly cupped his fists and pleaded, "Deputy Hall Master, please calm down. This is a misunderstanding." It was junior martial sister Chundan who was unforgiving. She provoked Brother Zhuo first. Brother Zhuo was just defending himself. Chundan cried out in alarm and rushed to say, "Vice Hall Master, this Chen Fa isn't a good person either. He's harboring this kid, bending the law for personal gain, and helping outsiders. You must seek justice for me, your disciple." Chen Fa was anxious in his heart. He hurriedly said to Chun Dan, who was on his shoulder, "Shut up. Now you're actually twisting the truth. Do you believe that I won't tear your mouth apart?" Chun Dan didn't care about the anxious Chen Fa at all. She continued to complain about Zhuowen first. In any case, it was all kinds of slander. "If you say another word, I'll completely cripple you. I'll make you a cripple. You won't even be able to be a cultivator." Zhuowen was still calm. He looked at Chun Dan. Although his voice was calm, it contained a strong murderous intent. Chun Dan shrunk her neck. She was a little scared. However, she quickly remembered that the Vice Hall Master was here. She didn't think it was a big deal. She continued, "How dare you? We're the Huangji aristocratic family. You're an outsider who dares to be so arrogant and even dare to threaten me. You're simply asking for death." Zhuowen didn't say anything else. He took a step forward. His right hand formed a claw and grabbed towards Chundan's neck. He wanted to lift her up. Bang! A terrifying force blasted out and blocked Zhuowen's claw. Zhuowen frowned and involuntarily retreated more than 10 steps. Every step he took set off a terrifying force. This was him channeling the remaining force from his body to his feet. Zhuowen raised his head and coldly looked at the rotund middle-aged man. Although this middle-aged man was round like a roly-poly toy, his strength wasn't weak. With Zhuowen's divine sense, he could sense that this middle-aged man's cultivation should be a half-step heaven's mandate master. His strength was far above Chen Fa. He's actually fine. The middle-aged man looked at Zhuowen, who was only retreating and didn't suffer any injuries. His voice was filled with surprise. He was a half-step heaven's mandate master, and the white-clothed youth in front of him was only a heavenly Dao master. The difference between the two was huge. This white-clothed youth actually blocked his attack and didn't seem to be injured. Chen Fa, Zhu Rong, and Chun Dan also looked at this scene in amazement. Among them, Chun Dan and Chen Fa were the most shocked. Obviously, Zhuowen's strength was somewhat beyond their expectations. He's got some skill. However, the Vice Hall Master is a half-step heaven's mandate master. When he gets serious, this arrogant guy will taste the bitter fruit. Chun Dan muttered. He thought that Zhuowen was just lucky this time. "You've got guts. You actually dared to attack in front of me. Who do you think you are?" The middle-aged man was somewhat angry and coldly said, "This woman is distorting the truth. I've already warned her. Unfortunately, she's still trying to smear my name. I'm not a saint. I won't allow this bitch to slander me as she pleases," said Zhuowen indifferently. "Who are you calling a bitch?" Chun Dan yelled. Zhuowen didn't pay attention to Chun Dan at all. Instead, he looked at the middle-aged man and said, "As the Vice Hall Master of the Hall of Penal Law, you should enforce the law impartially and fairly. Unfortunately, I don't see how you handle things fairly. What qualifications do you have to be the Vice Hall Master of the Hall of Penal Law? You're courting death. Do you really think that I won't dare to touch you just because Chen Fa brought you here? Die for me." The middle-aged man was furious. He attacked without holding back. The aura of a half-step heaven's mandate master burst out without holding back. "Vice Hall Master, you're being unreasonable. This person didn't do anything wrong. You." Chen Fa's expression changed greatly. He threw the Chun Dan on his shoulder to the ground and blocked in front of Zhuowen. He fiercely punched the middle-aged man. "Poochie. Chen Fa groaned and spat out a mouthful of blood. His face was as pale as snow and his forehead was covered in cold sweat. Zhuowen retreated several dozen steps and caught Chen Fa's body. Sensing Chen Fa's extremely weak injuries, his eyes were somewhat cold. This Vice Hall Master was simply too unreasonable. Not only did he not act impartially, but he also attacked without distinguishing between right and wrong. Zhuowen took out a divine healing pill and fed it to Chen Fa. Chen Fa's injuries were suppressed, and Chen Fa's pale face regained some color. "Brother Chen, many thanks," Zhuowen said gratefully. Chapter 27-26. Cripple Yu. Chen Fa shook his head and said guiltily, "Brother Zhuo, I've implicated you. If the elder of the Hall of Penal Law were here, he would definitely give you justice. The elder has always been meticulous and impartial." Chen Fa continued, "Brother Zhuo, you should leave first. I'll help you block the Vice Hall Master." "This is my fault." Zhuowen fell silent and shook his head, "No need. Also, this damn fatty won't let me go. Look around." Chen Fa was stunned. His face turned pale as he realized that the Hall of Penal Law had been surrounded by a group of black-clothed cultivators. They were all disciples of the Hall of Penal Law. Under the Vice Hall Master's orders, they blocked the way out of the Hall of Penal Law. Chen Fa looked at the middle-aged man angrily and said, "Vice Hall Master, aren't you going too far? It's our freedom to come and go. Are you planning to use force?" The middle-aged man said carelessly, "Chen Fa, I won't make things difficult for you. Leave this little bastard behind and get the hell out of here. I won't pursue the matter of you offending me today." "You!" Chen Fa said angrily. The middle-aged man did not wait for Chen Fa to continue speaking. He took a step forward and his right fist was like the wind as he suddenly punched out. A terrifying power exploded out and surged out waves of strength chi. It was like a spiral of strength chi, which looked extremely terrifying. Standing to the side, Zhu Rong's expression changed drastically. The middle-aged man's punch included Chen Fa. With the strength that the middle-aged man was displaying, even if Chen Fa didn't die, he would be half dead. Zhu Rong's eyes flashed with a trace of pity, but he didn't dare to step forward. Although he had a good relationship with Chen Fa, it wasn't to the point where he would risk his life for him. Chun Dan fell to the ground and grimaced in pain. However, after seeing the middle-aged man attack, she smiled happily and stared at the scene. She wanted to see how this white-clothed young man would be torn into pieces by the middle-aged man. Chen Fa struggled to stand up and stood in front of Zhuowen. He bitterly smiled and said to Zhuowen behind him, "Brother Zhuo, this is my responsibility. Originally, this wouldn't have happened, but it happened because of me. I'm really sorry. However, Brother Zhuo, you don't have to worry. Since this is my responsibility, I will bear it all as long as I'm still alive." Zhuowen looked at Chen Fa, who had a firm gaze in his eyes. He stretched out his right hand and patted Chen Fa's shoulder lightly as he said, "Brother Chen, thank you. Leave this damned fatty to me. I think it should be fine as long as I don't kill this fatty." As he spoke, Zhuowen had already stood in front of Chen Fa. His voice was indifferent, and the corners of his mouth were raised. His eyes were filled with a different kind of confidence. Chen Fa was stunned. He immediately stepped forward and tried to pull Zhuowen. Unfortunately, he was blocked by an invisible force and couldn't take a step forward. Chen Fa was shocked. This force was so strong that he couldn't even think of resisting. Was this the power of this white-clothed young man in front of him? How could he be so strong? Is he really the master of the heavenly law? How could he have such strong power? Chen Fa was absent-minded as he stared at the young man in front of him. He even forgot about the middle-aged man who was getting closer and closer. Zhuowen stood where he was and clenched his right hand into a fist. The power of the three-star peak Pangu sacred body faintly burst out and gathered in his right fist. Then he suddenly punched out his right fist. It was ordinary and there wasn't even any sound of the fist exploding. On the surface, it looked soft. Rumble. However, when this seemingly ordinary punch landed on the middle-aged man's fist, the crisp sound of bones cracking could be heard. Moreover, the sound of bones cracking could be heard continuously. Then, Zhu Rong, Chun Dan, Chen Fa, and the other disciples of the Hall of Penal Law were stunned to see that the middle-aged man's powerful punch had been neutralized. Then, the middle-aged man's right fist and right arm were twisted and bent like a tightened spring. Puff, puff. A bloody mist gushed out, accompanied by the middle-aged man's miserable shriek. It was ear-piercing and shocking. The middle-aged man continued to scream. At the same time, he made a prompt decision to retreat. Unfortunately, Zhuowen had already taken a step forward and arrived in front of the middle-aged man. Once again, he threw a punch at the middle-aged man's chest. Poochie. The middle-aged man spat out a mouthful of blood as terrifying ripples appeared on his round body. This was because Zhuowen's power was far too terrifying. When it reached the middle-aged man's body, the fat on his body involuntarily trembled. This was to disperse the terrifying power from Zhuowen. What's going on? My eyes must be playing tricks on me. This guy actually injured the deputy hall master. Zhu Rong muttered to himself in disbelief. No one was more shocked than Chun Dan. Her mouth was wide open as she watched this scene. She was speechless for a long time. Chen Fa stuttered as he stuttered, "Brother Zhuo. You defeated the deputy hall master?" Zhuowen smiled slightly and did not answer. Instead, he took a step forward and unceremoniously stepped on the middle-aged man's oily head with his right foot, pressing it deeply into the ground. The middle-aged man's head was stepped on. He struggled and flailed his limbs, but he could not break free at all. He could only whimper and feel very sullen. "How dare you? Let go of the deputy hall master. Are you trying to rebel?" After the surrounding disciples of the Hall of Penal Law came to their senses, they all began to speak. However, none of them dared to step forward to test Zhuowen's strength. "If you have the ability, then come and challenge me to a fight," Zhuowen taunted. Unfortunately, as soon as the words left Zhuowen's mouth, the disciples from the Hall of Beheadings and Executions dispersed. Not a single person dared to step forward to challenge him. Challenging the white-clothed youth in front of them was simply a joke. The deputy hall master, a half-step Heaven's Will master, was easily defeated by this kid and even stepped on under his foot. They did not want to follow in their deputy hall master's footsteps. That would be too humiliating. The middle-aged man also noticed that the disciples of the Hall of Penal Law had all fled. He was so angry that his whole body trembled. He wanted to curse out loud, but unfortunately, his face was facing down. With his face buried under Zhuowen's foot, he could not speak at all. All he could do was whimper. Zhuowen's right foot suddenly stomped on the back of the middle-aged man's head. His powerful physical strength erupted, and the middle-aged man trembled all over before completely fainting. After doing this, Zhuowen slowly walked over to Chun Dan, who had fallen to the ground not far away. "Ah, what are you doing?" Chun Dan looked as if she had seen the plague. When she saw Zhuowen coming over, she quickly shrank back, her eyes filled with fear and dread. Chapter 27-27. The Elder of Penal Law. "No. Spare me. I won't do it again." Chun Dan screamed and begged for mercy, hoping that Zhuowen would spare her. Unfortunately for her, Zhuowen was very cold. He walked up to Chun Dan and attacked her repeatedly, destroying her foundation. Chun Dan lay on the ground, her face ashen. Her foundation had been completely destroyed, and she was no different from a cripple. In the cruel world of cultivation, cripples had no dignity. She would no longer be accepted by the Huangji clan, and would be driven out of the clan. After doing all this, Zhuowen stood up and stopped in his tracks. He noticed that even more cultivators were crowding around him. These were the helpers the disciples of the Hall of Penal Law had called over. "What's going on? Why is it so noisy?" Suddenly, a dignified voice interrupted the clamor of the crowd. The cultivators who were originally surrounding the law enforcement hall and eyeing Zhuo when covetously all involuntarily opened up a path. At the end of the path, an old man with shoulder-length white hair walked over. There were a few wrinkles on his face, but they only added to his dignified and weathered aura. The Elder of Penal Law. Everyone hurriedly clasped their hands in greeting, including Chen Fa and Zhu Rong. Only Zhuowen stood in place, calmly looking at the old man and nodding slightly. He knew that this was the true master of the Hall of Penal Law, the Elder of Penal Law. The Elder of Penal Law's aura was incredibly strong, much stronger than Zudas. He was probably at the peak of the Master of Destiny, only half a step away from breaking through to the Lord of Profound Secrets. The Elder of Penal Law glanced at Zhuowen. Although he didn't know what had happened, he knew that Zhuowen was standing on top of a rotund, middle-aged man, and Chundan was lying at his feet in a daze. Needless to say, everything that had happened here had something to do with this person. Who are you? How dare you cause trouble in the Hall of Penal Law? The Elder of Penal Law's expression was unsightly. He stared coldly at Zhuowen, his tone unfriendly. Chen Fa hurriedly went forward and explained everything that had happened to the punishment elder. After hearing all of this, the elders of beheadings and executions sat there silently for a moment. Then he waved his hand and said to the surrounding cultivators, "All of you, disperse. This is a matter for the Hall of Beheadings and Executions. You people from the other halls shouldn't get involved." Hearing that, the surrounding cultivators dispersed, leaving only the disciples of the Hall of Beheadings behind. "You've caused enough trouble. Let Zhuling go," the disciplinary elder said rudely to Zhuowen. Zhuowen nodded and lifted his foot. He knew that the Zhuling that the disciplinary elder was talking about should be this damned fatty. The disciplinary elder came to Zhuling's side and squatted down to check on her. He discovered that other than her serious injuries, she was fine. Only then did his expression soften. "Disciplinary elder, you must seek justice for me. This man is vicious. He actually destroyed my foundation. You must kill him." Chundan hurriedly shouted when she saw the disciplinary elder. "Shut up." The disciplinary elder snorted coldly. He looked at Chundan with an emotionless gaze. He knew what had happened, and knew that it was all because of this woman, so he didn't have a good impression of her. Chundan stood frozen in place, trembling. When she saw the look on the disciplinary elder's face, she knew that he wouldn't stand up for her. Thinking of this, Chundan felt a trace of regret. She shouldn't have been so unforgiving. In the end, her foundation was destroyed and her future was bleak. "Zhu Rong, take Zhuling to the inner room and settle her down." The disciplinary elder arranged everything in an orderly manner. Zhu Rong obeyed and led the middle-aged man into the Hall of Beheadings. The disciplinary elder turned around and looked coldly at Zhuowen. "Chen Fa may have stated the truth, and I know that this woman caused all of this, but you still made a mistake. Do you understand? What do you want, disciplinary elder?" Zhuowen asked calmly. Chen Fa looked nervously at the disciplinary elder. He wanted to plead for leniency, but under the disciplinary elder's stern gaze, he could only shut his mouth. The disciplinary elder's eyes flickered. After a moment of silence, he said, "If you agree to a condition of mine, I can let bygones be bygones." "What condition?" "If it's reasonable, I can agree," Zhuowen said seriously. The disciplinary elder looked at the white-clothed young man in front of him in surprise and nodded. "You have a good temperament. Although you are only a heavenly Tao master, your strength is so powerful. It seems that you have many secrets. However, no matter what secrets you have, it's your business. The condition I want you to agree to is to help my Hall of Beheadings win the High God Convention in half a month." Zhuowen was startled. Obviously, he didn't know much about the High God Convention that the disciplinary elder was talking about. Chen Fa, who was standing beside Zhuowen, quickly explained to Zhuowen what the High God Convention was. It didn't take long for Zhuowen to find out what the High God Convention was. Zhuowen's eyes shone with an unimaginable light when he realized the true meaning of the High God Convention. It was said that the High God Convention was held every 1,000 years by the Huangji clan. Every time, only the younger generation of the Huangji clan under the age of 1,000 would participate. The High God Convention was said to be a competition in the world of the Huangji clan's most precious treasure, the Sun-Moon Demon Mirror, to determine the ranking of the younger generation. Of course, the higher the ranking, the more generous the rewards. The Hall of Beheadings was only one of the hundreds of branches of the Huangji clan. Moreover, it was one of the weaker branches. The disciplinary elder wanted a disciple to get a good result in the High God Convention. At the very least, such a result would be very good. Although the reward wasn't much, at least the reputation of the Hall of Beheadings would be preserved. Unfortunately, the Hall of Beheadings' talent had withered in recent years. The younger generation of the Hall of Beheadings' disciples was very ordinary. There wasn't a candidate that could satisfy the disciplinary elder. The disciplinary elder knew that with the quality of the disciples of the Hall of Beheadings, they would only be cannon fodder for others if they participated in the High God Convention. Now, he had found Zhuowen. Although Zhuowen wasn't a member of the Huangji clan, he wasn't a disciple of any other power either. He was just a rogue cultivator. The disciplinary elder could accept him as a disciple in name temporarily and give him the qualification to participate in the High God Convention. Although Zhuowen's cultivation wasn't very high, his strength was first class. After all, even Zhu Ling had been defeated by him. He could be considered an outstanding talent even among the younger generation. This was the main reason why the disciplinary elder had taken a fancy to Zhuowen. The reason why Zhuowen was pleasantly surprised wasn't because of the High God Convention, but because of the Sun-Moon Demon Mirror that would appear in the convention. According to Chen Fa, the Sun-Moon Demon Mirror's artifact spirit was transformed from a mysterious and powerful venomous insect. It was said that the venomous insect was closely related to the ancestral shaman of the primitive heaven domain. It was the family treasure of the Huangji clan. Zhuowen knew that the venomous insect that Chen Fa had mentioned should be the venomous insect of the ancestral shaman. In other words, the aura of the venomous insect that Zhuowen had sensed was very likely from the so-called Sun-Moon Demon Mirror of the Huangji clan. Chapter 27-28. Sun-Moon Demonic Mirror. Have you made up your mind? I can tell you now that it's an opportunity to participate in the High God competition. The Sun-Moon Demonic Mirror is the most precious treasure of the Huangji family. It contains abundant energy and has a 50% chance of advancing to the next realm. Even if you are unlucky and fail to advance, your cultivation will still increase a lot. I'm giving you this opportunity. You should cherish it. Seeing that Zhuowen was deep in thought, the law enforcement elder couldn't help but tell him about the benefits of the Sun-Moon Demonic Mirror. Zhuowen was amused. It seemed that the law enforcement elder was running out of candidates. Judging from his anxious look, he must want Zhuowen to represent the law enforcement hall in the High God competition. Since Zhuowen knew that the Sun-Moon Demonic Mirror contained the ancestral sorcerer venomous insects, he had made up his mind to participate in the High God competition. If he had the chance, he planned to devour the ancestral sorcerer venomous insects in the Sun-Moon Demonic Mirror. He cultivated the Pangu sacred body, which was the origin of the 12 ancestral sorcerers. Even if Zhuowen's current strength was weak, he could still subdue the ancestral sorcerer venomous insects with the aura of the Pangu sacred body. Since the law enforcement elder has said so, I can't refuse. Zhuowen nodded. When the law enforcement elder saw that Zhuowen had agreed, a smile bloomed on his face like a blooming chrysanthemum. At the same time, he heaved a sigh of relief. The strength of the white-clothed young man in front of him was not bad. Although his cultivation was low, he was able to defeat Zhu Ling as the heavenly Dao master. Obviously, he was not an ordinary person. He would definitely have a place in the High God competition. You are Zhuowen, right? This is the token of a registered disciple of the Hall of Penal Law. With this token, you can participate in the High God competition. Now that the High God competition is coming, you can stay in the Hall of Penal Law for the time being, the law enforcement elder said with a smile. Zhuowen nodded. His eyes flickered and he suddenly asked, Elder, I saw the third head of the Huangji family, Lord Huang Lin, leave in a hurry. Where is he going? Zhuowen asked this question on purpose. He knew that Huang Lin should have gone to the 8 heavens to investigate the cause of Huang Ziyi and Master Yuan Hui's death. Although he had purposely erased his own aura after killing Master Yuan Hui and the others, he still felt that things were not that simple. After all, the Huangji aristocratic family was a Dao Palace-level force. They had many tricks up their sleeves. Perhaps they had some special methods to find out who the real culprit was. The law-enforcing elder was startled. Then, he nodded and said, there is indeed such a thing. I heard that the third prince and his guards have died in the 8 heavens. Sir Huang Lin must have gone to the 8 heavens to investigate the murderer. Chen Fa suddenly said, Elder, I heard that Master Yuan Hui seemed to have met with a mishap. That's why the third master was alarmed. The law-enforcing elder sighed softly and said, Master Yuan Hui is an eternal level divine formation master. In our Huangji aristocratic family, his status is close to that of the third master. I really can't imagine that there is someone in the 8 heavens who can kill Master Yuan Hui. Chen Fa was silent. When the news of Master Yuan Hui's death came from the Huangji aristocratic family, it was like a heavy bomb had exploded and caused a huge uproar. Many people could not believe it. Zhuowen touched his nose. To be honest, he was the initiator of all this. If the law-enforcing elder and Chen Fa knew that the murderer who killed Master Yuan Hui and the third prince was standing right in front of them, who knew how they would feel? After the murderer killed the third prince and Master Yuan Hui, he must have erased all traces of the murder and escaped. Can the murderer be found in this way? Zhuowen pretended to be curious and asked. This was the question that Zhuowen wanted to ask the most. He wanted to know if the Huangji aristocratic family had the means to find the murderer after he had erased all traces. The law-enforcing elder sneered and said, The murderer who killed Master Yuan Hui and the third prince is someone that our Huangji aristocratic family must kill. Master Huanglin should have gone to the 8 heavens to collect the aura of the third prince and Master Yuan Hui. No matter how strong the murderer is, even if he can erase all traces, there will still be some aura left from the battle. Master Huanglin will go to the 8 heavens to collect the aura of Master Yuan Hui and the third prince and bring them back to integrate into the Sun and Moon demonic mirror. The Sun and Moon demonic mirror can trace the time and space according to the aura of the deceased. It can also show the scene of the deceased's death and leave behind the murderer's aura. By then, it will be clear who the murderer is. The law-enforcing elder sneered and continued, The murderer thought that he did it secretly, but in fact, he will be found very soon. By then, he will be wanted by the Huangji aristocratic family. Zhuowen was shocked. He had not expected the Sun and Moon demonic mirror to be so powerful. It could trace the time and space, reconstruct the scene of the deceased's death, and leave behind the murderer's aura. That meant that when Master Huanglin returned, Zhuowen's identity would be exposed. Moreover, he was in the Huangji aristocratic family. By then, he would not be able to escape. Thinking of this, Zhuowen began to hesitate. His expression remained calm as he asked casually, I wonder when Sir Huanglin will return? After all, the Sun and Moon demonic mirror is needed for the High God Convention. When Master Huanglin returns, will he be able to use the Sun and Moon demonic mirror to find the murderer? The law-enforcing elder shook his head and said, Of course not. When Master Huanglin returns, I think the High God Convention will have already begun. If he wants to find the murderer, he will have to wait until the convention is over. Zhuowen nodded and sighed in his heart. He was not willing to leave the Huangji aristocratic family now. After all, there was the ancestor sorcerer's venomous insect, which was a great opportunity for him. After all, if he obtained the ancestor sorcerer's venomous insect, Zhuowen would have a great chance of advancing to the 4-star Pangu sacred body. By then, his strength would have a qualitative change. He did not want to miss such an opportunity. For this reason, it was absolutely worth it for Zhuowen to take a little risk. Zhuowen, do you have any other questions? The law-enforcing elder asked. Zhuowen shook his head. The law-enforcing elder nodded and waved his sleeve. He asked Chen Fa to bring Zhuowen into the Hall of Penal Law and arrange a good room for him. After the room was arranged, Chen Fa bid farewell to Zhuowen. He still had to guard the door. After all, it was his duty. After Chen Fa left, Zhuowen sat cross-legged in the room. He took out the Emperor Elixir Furnace and many divine herbs. He now planned to refine primordial Tao divine elixirs. He planned to use this half a month to improve his array skills. Chapter 27-29. Semi-finished Heavenly Fate pill. Activating the Divine Flame, the Pill Emperor Turtle left the pill furnace and began to assist Zhuowen in refining the divine pills. The Pill Emperor Turtle was working even harder than before. Of course, this fellow's appetite was also big, and it needed more divine pills. Heavenly Tao-grade divine pills were no longer attractive to this fellow, and it urgently needed higher-grade divine pills. Therefore, the Pill Emperor Turtle was so eager to cooperate with Zhuowen when he decided to raise his alchemy level. Time passed slowly. Zhuowen spent 5 days and failed dozens of times before successfully refining a batch of primordial Tao-grade divine pills, advancing to a primordial Tao-grade alchemist. Zhuowen spent another 7 days and failed nearly 100 times before successfully refining a primordial Tao-grade divine pill, advancing to a primordial Tao-grade alchemist. After advancing to a primordial Tao-grade alchemist, Zhuowen stopped refining. Instead, he put away the Pill Emperor furnace and opened the door. There were only 3 days left until the High God Convention. If Zhuowen wanted to break through to the Heavenly Fate realm, he would need to fail even more divine pills and more time to successfully advance. Although Zhuowen had a lot of divine herbs on him, he had consumed a lot of them in the past 12 days. In fact, the number of divine herbs on him had decreased sharply. Even Zhuowen was heartbroken. He had to slow down. Walking out of the room, Zhuowen sent a message to Chen Fa. Zhuowen knew nothing about the city within the city where the Huangji family was located. Therefore, he could only rely on Chen Fa, who was a local. Zhuowen didn't have to wait long before Chen Fa arrived at the door of Zhuowen's room. Moreover, Zhuowen knew that Chen Fa was also a member of the disciplinary hall, and he was highly regarded by the disciplinary elder. Among the many disciples of the disciplinary hall, Chen Fa was the disciple with the most potential. Because Chen Fa was highly regarded by the disciplinary elder, he was envied by the Vice Hall Master and was often made difficult by Vice Hall Master Zhu Ling previously. When Chen Fa met the Deputy Hall Master, he knew that things weren't going well. Furthermore, the reason why Zhu Ling was targeting Zhuowen was largely because of Chen Fa. As for Chen Fa, it was the disciplinary elder who had arranged for him to guard the city gate. He wanted him to train there for a period of time and see more experts coming in and out, increasing Chen Fa's knowledge. Brother Zhuo, you've finally come out. Chen Fa's eyes lit up when he saw Zhuowen. Zhuowen smiled and took out a palm-sized jade bottle and handed it to Chen Fa. Seeing Chen Fa's puzzled expression, Zhuowen explained, "There are 3 heavenly fate pills inside." "What? Heavenly fate pill?" Chen Fa cried out in shock and disbelief as he stared at Zhuowen. However, Chen Fa was quickly interrupted by Zhuowen. Zhuowen continued, "This is indeed a heavenly fate pill, but it's a semi-finished product. Its effect is far inferior to a real heavenly fate pill. The so-called heavenly fate pill was a divine pill that could help a cultivator become a heavenly fate lord. After Zhuowen became a primordial chaos alchemist, he immediately tried to refine the heavenly fate pill. There was no doubt that Zhuowen had failed, but there were still 12 heavens will pills in the cauldron. However, Zhuowen found that even though 9 of them were trash, 3 of them were not real failures and were only half-finished products. These semi-finished products weren't trash pills. They also had powerful medicinal effects, but they couldn't be compared to a real heavenly fate pill. However, these semi-finished heavenly fate pills were extremely precious treasures for primordial chaos alchemists. The medicinal effects of the heavenly fate pill were too overwhelming. Ordinary primordial chaos alchemists couldn't bear the terrifying medicinal effects of a real heavenly fate pill. Only peak primordial chaos alchemists could barely bear the effects of the heavenly fate pill and absorb a portion of its medicinal effects to have a chance of becoming a heavenly fate lord. Of course, the heavenly fate pill was most suitable for half-step heaven's fate lords. Most half-step heaven's fate lords would definitely be able to become a heavenly fate lord after taking it. The semi-finished heavenly fate pill's effects were weaker and gentler than the real heavenly fate pill. It was most suitable for primordial chaos alchemists to use. Zhuowen gave the 3 semi-finished heavenly fate pills to Chen Fa. He believed that Chen Fa, who was only an early primordial chaos alchemist, could at least reach peak primordial chaos alchemist. If he was lucky, he could even reach the half-step heaven's fate lord realm. Brother Zhuo, this is too precious. You will definitely need it in the future. You don't have to give it to me. Chen Fa was very excited but also very rational. He pushed his hand away and refused. In his opinion, the Heavenly Fate Pill was already an extremely precious item. Although it was only a semi-finished Heavenly Fate Pill, it wasn't something a disciple of the disciplinary hall like him could normally obtain. Moreover, Zhuowen's cultivation was lower than his. After becoming a primordial chaos alchemist, Zhuowen would need this item more than him. Therefore, Chen Fa decisively refused. Zhuowen smiled and pushed the jade bottle towards Chen Fa. I refined this semi-finished Heavenly Fate Pill, but it failed. If I need it in the future, I will refine it again. Thank you for taking care of me before, Brother Chen. This is just a small gift to show my respect. Brother Zhuo, you are a Heavenly Fate alchemist. Chen Fa was stunned and immediately looked at Zhuowen with excitement. Zhuowen shook his head. I'm not a Heaven's Mandate grade alchemist, I'm only a chaotic grade alchemist. If I was a Heaven's Mandate grade alchemist, then my Heaven's Mandate pills wouldn't have failed. Brother Zhuo is too modest. If you were only a primordial chaos alchemist, it would be impossible for you to refine a semi-finished Heavenly Fate pill. It would definitely be a waste pill. However, you were able to refine a semi-finished Heavenly Fate pill. In fact, your level has already reached the level of a Heavenly Fate alchemist. Chen Fa said. Zhuowen was startled and revealed a thoughtful look. It seemed that he still didn't know much about the Xian Mi Heavenly Domain's alchemy level. The higher the level of an alchemist, the higher the grade of divine pills they could refine, but at the same time, the failure rate would also increase proportionally. A Heavenly Fate alchemist could refine a Heavenly Fate pill with a 30% success rate, which was already very impressive. However, most Heavenly Fate alchemists didn't even have a 30% success rate. Zhuowen, on the other hand, relied on the alchemy art in the mysterious alchemy book to achieve a terrifying success rate. His Heavenly Dao Divine pills had a 100% success rate, Primordial Dao Divine pills had a 90% success rate, and Primordial Chaos Master pills' success rate had reached a terrifying 90% success rate. Moreover, although Zhuowen was only a primordial chaos alchemist, relying on the mysterious alchemy art, Zhuowen should have failed directly in refining the Heavenly Fate pill. However, he managed to refine 3 semi-finished Heavenly Fate pills. From this, it could be seen how much the mysterious alchemy art increased the success rate. At the same time, Zhuowen also knew how heaven-defying the mysterious alchemy art he mastered was for alchemists. If other alchemists knew that Zhuowen had such a powerful alchemy art, it would probably cause a lot of alchemists to be jealous. Of course, even if he didn't rely on the alchemy art, Zhuowen's success rate was still higher than ordinary alchemists. Seeing Zhuowen insist, Chen Fa didn't hesitate and thanked Zhuowen. However, his heart was filled with excitement. At the same time, his impression of Zhuowen increased greatly. Chapter 2730. Huang Yi. By the way, Brother Zhuo, why did you send me a message this time? Chen Fa put away the jade bottle and looked at Zhuowen happily. Zhuowen said, Brother Chen, there are only 3 days left until the Yun God Assembly. I want to use these 3 days to get a good understanding of the city within the city. Also, where will the Yun God Assembly be held? Chen Fa chuckled and patted his chest. Brother Zhuo, you've found the right person. I know the Huangji family's city like the back of my hand. Come with me. Then, Chen Fa took Zhuowen for a stroll around the city within the city. Every time they arrived at a well-known place, Chen Fa would talk non-stop about the characteristics of the place and the places that Zhuowen should pay attention to. Finally, Chen Fa brought Zhuowen to the center of the city within the city. At the center of the city was an incomparably huge palace. Describing the palace as golden and dazzling might be a bit of an understatement because the palace was simply too luxurious. This palace is the residence of the Huangji family's core members and high-level experts. It's the most luxurious place in the Huangji family. Chen Fa looked at the luxurious palace in front of him with undisguised envy in his eyes. In front of the palace, there was an extremely vast square. The extravagance of this square was almost on par with the palace behind it. It had almost everything. At this moment, the square was extremely lively and bustling. Zhuowen even saw many cultivators using their power to build all kinds of supports. It was similar to the stage on Earth in Zhuowen's previous life. Chen Fa pointed at the square and said to Zhuowen, "Brother Zhuo, the Yun God Assembly will be held in this square. Do you see the tower in the center of the square?" Zhuowen followed Chen Fa's finger and looked at the tower in front of him. He found that there was a support at the top of the tower. This support should be used to fix something. This. Zhuowen was puzzled. The Sun-Moon Demon Mirror is placed at the top of the tower. When the time comes, the Great Master will use the Sun-Moon Demon Mirror and envelop the entire plaza with its power. It is said that the entire plaza will fall into a strange space-time. At that time, the Flourishing God Assembly will officially begin, Chen Fa said. Zhuowen nodded. His gaze fell on the bracket at the top of the tower, and a look of anticipation appeared on his face. Zhuowen knew that the parasite he wanted was inside the Sun and Moon Demon Mirror. Once the High God Refinement Conference began, it would be the time for him, Zhuowen, to explore and obtain the parasite. However, he also knew that the Sun-Moon Demonic Mirror was under the control of the first head of the Huangji clan after all. He had to do it secretly. Otherwise, if he was discovered, he, Zhuowen, would really be unable to escape. "Yo, isn't this the gatekeeper, Chen Fa? Why aren't you guarding your door? What are you doing here?" Suddenly, an ear-piercing voice was heard. As soon as the voice fell, a burst of laughter came from the other side. Zhuowen turned his head and saw a group of people coming from the east. The leader of the group was a young man with shoulder-length curly hair. The young man looked arrogant and insufferably arrogant. He was even more arrogant than Huang Ziyi, the third prince of the Huangji clan. "Huang Yi, why are you here?" Chen Fa looked at the arrogant young man and couldn't help but frown slightly. Zhuowen revealed a look of understanding. Chen Fa had already told him about the direct descendants of the Huangji clan. There were a total of 5 heirs of the Huangji clan. Among them, Huang Ziyi, whom Zhuowen had killed in the 8 heavens, was ranked third among the 5 heirs. He was a hedonistic young master with a bad reputation. Moreover, his talent was not good. He was the heirs that the headmaster disliked the most. Huang Yi was the second prince. His talent was mediocre and his cultivation was only at the Dao Yuan master realm. Like Huang Ziyi, he was just a good-for-nothing. Of course, among the 5 princes of the Huangji clan, Huang Ziyi and Huang Yi were good-for-nothings with mediocre talent. However, the other 3 princes were first-class geniuses. In particular, the eldest prince, Huang Wuqi, was exceptionally talented. He had cultivated for less than 3,000 years and was already an eternal overlord. Moreover, it was said that Huang Wuqi had the potential to break through the eternal overlord realm and enter the 3rd step of Dao validation before the age of 5,000. He was highly regarded by the 3 great masters of the Huangji clan and was one of the top monstrous geniuses in the host region. As for Huang Yi, Chen Fa had already told Zhuowen to be careful. Because Huang Yi and Chen Fa had some conflicts, he liked to make things difficult for Zhuowen whenever they met. Now that Zhuowen was walking with Chen Fa, he was afraid that he would attract Huang Yi's attention. Sure enough, after Chen Fa spoke, Huang Yi's gaze fell on Zhuowen and he kept sizing him up. When he discovered that Zhuowen's aura was only that of a heavenly Dao master, his eyes revealed a trace of ridicule. "Who is this trash? Why haven't I seen him before?" Huang Yi sneered. Zhuowen raised his eyebrows. He hadn't expected Huang Yi to call him trash. This was clearly an insult. "In my opinion, you don't seem to be any better than me, right?" Zhuowen replied indifferently. This sentence seemed to have angered Huang Yi. Huang Yi stared coldly at Zhuowen and said, "What did you say? Do you dare say it again in front of me?" Zhuowen looked at Huang Yi calmly and said, "I said you aren't any better than me. If you say I'm trash, then you're trash too. Good. Good. Good." Huang Yi repeated the word good 3 times, but the murderous intent in his eyes was surging like a raging storm. Zhuowen's eyes turned cold. He had only retorted, and Huang Yi wanted to kill him. "Die." Huang Yi stretched out his right hand and grabbed at Zhuowen without hesitation. It was obvious that he wanted to kill Zhuoan with a single palm strike. He was a Dao Yuan master, so it was naturally easy for him to kill a heavenly Dao master with a single strike. Boom! Chen Fa stood in front of Zhuoan and pushed Huang Yi back with a single palm strike. He said in a low voice, "Second Prince, aren't you going too far? Brother Zhuo is my guest. Don't involve him in our conflict." Huang Yi's eyes narrowed, and he took a few steps back. He looked coldly at Chen Fa and said, "Chen Fa, this trash dared to insult me. I didn't kill his entire family and only killed him. That's already the greatest mercy I can give him. How dare you stand in front of me? Aren't you looking down on me too much?" Chen Fa snorted coldly. He still stood in front of Zhuoan and stared coldly at Huang Yi. "Liu Qi, attack him. Blast Chen Fa away." Huang Yi ordered a man behind him. The man was silent. He took a step forward, and a surge of energy surged out of his body and poured onto Chen Fa like an avalanche. Chen Fa's expression changed slightly because he realized that the man's aura was extremely vast. He was actually an expert in the later stage of Hunyuan Master, and his cultivation was even higher than his. Chapter 2731. Huang Yi enraged. Bang! 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 Instantly, Chen Fa and the guard, Liu Qi, began to fight. A terrifying force erupted, spreading out like ripples in all directions, distorting space and shattering the void. Chen Fa was only at the early stage of Hunyuan Lord, which was slightly weaker than Liu Qi's cultivation. Therefore, Chen Fa was instantly at a disadvantage. However, it wouldn't be easy for Liu Qi to defeat Chen Fa. After all, Chen Fa wasn't some random Tom, Dick, or Harry. The commotion caused by Chen Fa and Liu Qi's battle attracted the attention of many cultivators in the square. That's Chen Fa from the Hall of Penal Law. The one fighting with him seems to be the second prince's bodyguard, Liu Qi. Why are the two of them fighting? Don't you know that Chen Fa has a conflict with the second prince? If Chen Fa wasn't valued by the Elder of Penal Law, the second prince would have cut him into pieces. With the Elder of Penal Law's support, the second prince can only find trouble with Chen Fa. Look, the second prince is walking towards the white-clothed youth behind Chen Fa. The white-clothed youth is only a heavenly Dao master. It seems like he's going to suffer. Discussions broke out, but the direction of the discussion quickly changed. The focus of attention shifted from Chen Fa and Liu Qi to the white-clothed youth not far away. The white-clothed youth was very ordinary. His aura was only that of a heavenly Dao master. He was considered insignificant in the entire square and wasn't worth mentioning. But now, in front of the white-clothed youth, the second son of the Huangji clan, Huang Yi, was slowly walking over, and the direction he was walking towards just happened to be where the white-clothed youth was. The crowd wasn't blind. They could see the malicious intent on Huang Yi's face. They knew that the white-clothed youth was going to suffer. Huang Yi was going to personally teach the white-clothed youth a lesson. Huang Yi's status was the same as Huang Zi's. His position in the Huangji clan was actually quite awkward. The Huangji aristocratic family valued talent and strength more than bloodline. Although Huang Yi was a direct descendant, his innate talent was the same as Huang Zi's. Moreover, he was a hedonistic son who liked to stir up trouble. There were many talented disciples in the Huangji clan who did not think highly of Huang Yi. Of course, no matter how useless Huang Yi was, he was still a Dao origin master. It was easy for a Dao origin bishop to teach a heavenly Dao master a lesson. Therefore, the spectators all silently mourned for the white-clothed youth. Huang Yi's gaze was ferocious as he slowly walked towards Zhuoan with a sinister smile on his face. Huang Yi had an extremely strong sense of superiority in his heart. As far as he was concerned, he only needed to make a move, and this white-clothed young man before him would kneel and beg for mercy. "Kneel down and lick my shoes clean. Then, raise your head and apologize to me." Huang Yi walked in front of Zhuoan and lifted his right foot. His cold eyes burst forth with a mocking light as he sneered. Zhuoan's gaze turned cold. This Huang Yi really did not know what was good for him. He, Zhuoan, did not intend to stir up trouble, but Huang Yi did not want to let him go. Did he really think that Zhuowen was easy to bully? Scram! Zhuowen said coldly and did not pay any more attention to Huang Yi. Huang Yi squinted his eyes and sneered. You're quite stubborn. However, I would like to see if you can still be so stubborn. As he spoke, Huang Yi's right hand formed into a claw and suddenly stretched out towards Zhuowen's neck. It was obvious that he wanted to grab Zhuowen like an eagle grabbing a chick. Many cultivators in the surroundings saw this scene and secretly shook their heads. They felt that this white-clothed youth did not know how to appreciate favors. He actually knew Huang Yi's identity and was still so stubborn. Wasn't he looking for trouble? Zhuowen sneered in his heart and casually threw out a punch. This punch was ordinary and looked like a punch thrown by a child. When Huang Yi saw that Zhuowen actually dared to throw out a punch, he could not help but laugh out loud. His eyes were filled with contempt and disdain. Crack! Suddenly, the crisp sound of bones cracking was heard. Immediately, the crowd looked at the scene in front of them in a daze. The moment Huang Yi's claw came into contact with the right fist of the white-clothed youth, it immediately twisted and bent. Then, the white-clothed youth's forearm, elbow, and even his arm were all twisted and broken into pieces. Bang! 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 A bloody mist erupted as Huang Yi's right hand was directly blasted into a bloody pulp. On the other hand, Zhuo Wen's ordinary punch was like a hot knife through butter. After annihilating Huang Yi's right arm, it smashed onto his chest. Puff! Huang Yi spat out a mouthful of blood. His waist arched like a cooked prawn and he was immediately sent flying. He was in a sorry state and crashed onto the ground. He kept twitching and struggling. The surrounding atmosphere suddenly became much colder. The crowd was shocked and did not dare to breathe loudly. They just stared blankly at the scene. Everyone was in disbelief. Although Huang Yi's talent was not good, he was still a Dao Yuan master. A Dao Yuan master was one realm higher than the Heaven Dao master. It was natural for a Dao Yuan master to crush the Heaven Dao master. But now, Huang Yi, who was a Dao Yuan master, had been beaten up like a dead dog by the white-clothed youth, who was just a Heaven Dao master. This made everyone's jaws drop. What's going on? What just happened is really against common sense. The second prince was beaten up just like that. You're right. The second prince was really beaten up. Moreover, he was beaten up by the Heaven Dao master with just one punch. It seems that this white-clothed youth is a tough guy. He hid his strength well. However, this white-clothed youth is too ruthless. He actually beat up the second prince. You should know that this is the Huangji family. Not many people dare to beat up the direct descendant of the Huangji family. This is the worst thing that has happened in the past few years. The crowd was discussing animatedly. However, when they looked at Zhuowen, they were first shocked and then ridiculed him. Although Huang Yi was a good-for-nothing, he was still the second prince of the Huangji family. His status was not something an ordinary disciple could compare to. Even if it was indeed Huang Yi's mistake at the beginning, there really wasn't anyone in the Huangji clan who dared to be as heavy-handed as Zhuo Wen, directly destroying Huang Yi's right arm. Looking at the injury on Huang Yi's right arm, everyone knew that it would be difficult for his right arm to recover without the help of precious herbs. Chen Fa and Liu Qi, who were originally standing together aggressively, were also stunned when they saw this scene. Liu Qi threw a punch at Chen Fa and immediately swept to Huang Yi's side like a hurricane. He kowtowed repeatedly and said, "Second prince, I did not protect you well. Please punish me." Huang Yi screamed in pain. His voice was like a pig facing a butcher's knife. It was extremely shrill and ear-piercing. "Liu Qi, you kill him for me." Huang Yi's face was pale. Due to the intense pain, he was stuttering and trembling. Chapter 2732. Reminder from the law enforcement patriarch: how dare you hurt the second prince? You must be tired of living. I will kill you today as an apology to the second prince. Liu Qi's eyes were cold as he struck out with his right palm. Surging energy rippled out and then condensed into an even more vast and terrifying energy wave at the center. The shape of this energy wave was somewhat similar to a palm. Soon after, this energy wave suddenly descended, instantly arriving above Zhuowen's head. Zhuowen's eyes were cold. Just as he was about to make a move, he narrowed his eyes and quietly withdrew his right hand. Then, he stood calmly in place. Rumble. Just as the energy wave was about to hit Zhuowen's head, an even more powerful energy came from behind Zhuowen and finally hit the energy wave. Liu Qi's pupils constricted, and he involuntarily retreated backwards as a terrifying shockwave swept out. When Liu Qi came to a stop, there were two extremely deep marks on the ground in front of him. Those were the marks left by his feet because they could not bear the force of the impact. Poochie. Liu Qi froze in place, spitting out a mouthful of blood as he stared in horror at something behind Zhuowen. Behind Zhuowen, an old man in a loose robe slowly walked over. There were some wrinkles on the old man's face. His eyes were slightly downcast, but he exuded an even more profound and dignified aura. Elder of Law Enforcement. Liu Qi's face darkened as he recognized the old man. Second Prince Huang Yi also revealed an expression of disbelief as he stared blankly at the elder. Shortly after, when he regained his senses, he hurriedly cried out, "Disciplinary elder, what do you mean by this? Liu Qi is my personal bodyguard. What are you trying to do by attacking my personal bodyguard?" The surrounding people were also discussing spiritedly. Many of them guessed that the law enforcement elder had taken action because of the white-clothed young man. After all, Liu Qi had attacked the white-clothed young man, and the law enforcement elder had acted coincidentally. The law enforcement elder was obviously helping the white-clothed young man. The law enforcement elder's eyes were calm. He glanced at Zhuowen before looking at Huang Yi again. "Second Prince, this young man is a disciple of the Hall of Penal Law. I hope you can give me some face and not pursue this matter further." As soon as the law enforcement elder's words came out, the surrounding people were in an uproar. The law enforcement elder had always been impartial. His image of fairness and justice was deeply rooted in the hearts of the people. He had never been biased. But now, the law enforcement elder, who had always been impartial, was openly siding with the white-clothed young man. Everyone couldn't help but wonder who the white-clothed young man was. He had actually provoked the law enforcement elder to openly side with him. Huang Yi's expression also turned ugly. Although he was the second prince, his status should be on par with the disciplinary elder. However, that wasn't the case. Huang Yi's talent was too weak, and he was only a profligate. Relying on the fact that he was a direct descendant, he was indeed able to intimidate others. However, compared to the elders of the Huangji family who possessed real power, his status was still much weaker. The law enforcement elder's words were above his. Since the former had spoken, he had to consider carefully. "Second Prince, I won't let you suffer a loss. This is a golden spike pill. It can restore your right arm. Moreover, I will compensate you with 100,000 high-grade heavenly law origin crystals," said the law enforcement elder. Huang Yi's expression only improved when he saw the law enforcement elder's golden spike pill. The golden spike pill was a divine pill of mixed yuan level. It was extremely valuable. Moreover, it could completely restore the disability caused by heavenly law energy. The golden spike pill was perfect for Huang Yi's situation. Moreover, 100,000 high-grade heavenly law origin crystals was not a small sum. Even a prince like Huang Yi could not take out so many high-grade heavenly law origin crystals in a short period of time. In a spurt of energy, the law enforcement elder immediately took out a spirit ring and handed it to Huang Yi. "Second Prince, there are 100,000 high-grade heavenly law origin crystals in this spirit ring. As for the golden spike pill, I will send a disciple to give it to you after this." Huang Yi's expression improved. He took the spirit ring and checked it. After confirming that there were indeed 100,000 high-grade heavenly law origin crystals inside, he nodded and forced himself to stand up. "Since the law enforcement elder has come forward to plead for mercy, I will spare your worthless life." Huang Yi coldly glanced at Zhuowen and continued, "However, you can't escape punishment. Break one of your arms, and I won't pursue this matter any further." Zhuowen's gaze was calm. "If you want one of my arms, you can come and take it yourself. What are you dawdling over there for? Huang Yi's expression changed slightly, and then he said angrily, "Dog that doesn't know how to appreciate favors. If it wasn't for the law-enforcing elder, I would have already gotten someone to tear you apart. How could I let you be so arrogant and despotic? Do you really think I'm afraid of you today?" Zhuowen smiled faintly. He didn't take Huang Yi seriously at all. Even if the law enforcement elder personally attacked Zhuowen, he wouldn't be afraid, let alone Huang Yi, who was only a Dao Yuan master. Zhuowen wouldn't necessarily be afraid. Zhuowen's disregard angered Huang Yi instantly. Just as Huang Yi was about to explode, the law enforcement elder hurriedly stepped forward to mediate. Only then did Huang Yi's anger subside slightly. "Little bastard, don't think that you'll be safe after escaping today. I'll let you off today for the sake of the law enforcement elder. But let me tell you, the law enforcement elder can protect you for a while, but do you think he can protect you forever?" After saying this, Huang Yi hurriedly left with Liu Qi. He, the second prince, was defeated by a nobody in one move. This was too humiliating. Since he couldn't deal with Zhuowen now, he naturally wouldn't stay here to embarrass himself. After Huang Yi left, the surrounding cultivators gradually dispersed as well. "Elder." Chen Fa hurriedly came before the law enforcement elder and said with a hint of shame. The law enforcement elder merely nodded at Chen Fa. Then, he looked at Zhuowen with a hint of sternness in his eyes. "Zhuowen, do you know how stupid you were just now? I know that you're strong, but you're just a person after all. This is the core area of the Huangji family, a Dao mansion-level force. Huang Yi is indeed no match for you. Even Huang Yi's personal guard, Liu Qi, is no match for you. However, Huang Yi is the second prince of the Huangji family. His status is far above yours. As long as Huang Yi gives the order, countless cultivators around here will be willing to work for him to kill you. If that really happens, your life will be in danger." The law enforcement elder spoke slowly, his voice filled with dissatisfaction. Chapter 2733. The High God Assembly. Zhuowen said lazily, "Elder, there are some things I can compromise on, but when it comes to my principles, I won't back down. Especially when it comes to people like Huang Yi who provokes me. I'll beat them up one by one. I won't show any mercy." The enforcement elder gave Zhuowen a deep look and sighed. "Do as you wish. However, you have to be careful of Huang Yi. He will also be participating in the High God Assembly. Given his connections and methods, I'm afraid he'll be able to gather many powerful cultivators. When the time comes, he'll definitely make a move against you." Zhuowen nodded. He didn't care much about Huang Yi. In other words, Zhuowen didn't care about any of the younger generation participating in the High God Assembly. Zhuowen knew very well that his current strength far surpassed his peers. Although his aura was only that of the heavenly Dao master, his strength had already surpassed first-step Dao confirmation cultivators. Moreover, with the terrifying Huyi divine arrow, Zhuowen even had the power to kill an eternal overlord. Since the High God Assembly was only for the younger generation of the Huangji clan under the age of 1000, any cultivator of the younger generation who could reach the first stage of the second step of Dao confirmation, such as the Master of Destiny, would be heaven-defying geniuses. As for a cultivator like the Heavenly Fate Lord, Zhuowen really didn't think much of him. The enforcement elder frowned slightly when he saw that Zhuowen didn't care. He didn't like Zhuowen's attitude. However, the enforcement elder felt helpless. After all, he had personally invited this hot potato to the High God Assembly. There are still 3 days before the High God Assembly. Don't wander around during these 3 days. Otherwise, you'll get into trouble again. The law-enforcing elder instructed before he left the place. After this incident, Zhuowen and Chen Fa didn't have any desire to continue strolling around. They returned to the Hall of Beheadings to prepare for the High God Assembly in 3 days. When Zhuowen returned to his room, he activated the restriction and began to study alchemy and array Dao again. During this period of time, while he was improving his alchemy Dao, he did not lag behind in the aspect of array Dao either. Now, he was already a heavenly Dao array Dao master. Furthermore, He had obtained the Array Dao inheritance left behind by Master Yuan Hui. This had greatly inspired Zhuowen. Zhuowen now felt that he was not far from becoming a primordial Dao Array Master. In these 3 days, he continued to study the Dao of formations. Perhaps he might have a breakthrough. 3 days quickly flew by. Zhuowen, who was sitting cross-legged in a dark room, suddenly opened his eyes. Zhuowen's eyes shone with an unbearable light as a terrifying invisible ripple extended from his forehead. This ripple was not the energy of the heavenly Dao, but a kind of powerful spiritual energy. However, Zhuowen quickly retracted the power of this invisible ripple. It seems like I have successfully broken through to the primordial Dao Array Dao Master. Master Yuan Hui's understanding of Array Dao is indeed extraordinary. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to break through so quickly, Zhuowen muttered to himself with a smile on his face. In these 3 days, Zhuowen had not only made a breakthrough in the Array Dao, but also in the Alchemy Dao. In these 3 days, Zhuowen had refined over a dozen furnaces of heavenly fate pills. Although he failed every time, the number of half-finished heavenly fate pills he could refine had increased. When Zhuowen's last batch of heavenly fate pills came out of the furnace, it was filled with half-finished heavenly fate pills. It could be said that Zhuowen's alchemy Dao was getting closer and closer to the heavenly fate realm. At the very least, Zhuowen could successfully refine half-finished heavenly fate pills. Dong dong dong. There was a knock on the door, followed by Chen Fei's voice. Zhuowen knew that Chen Fei had called him out. The Flourishing God Assembly was about to begin today. When he opened the door, Zhuowen saw Chen Fei standing respectfully behind the law enforcement elder. Behind the law enforcement elder were 5 disciples. These 5 disciples were 3 men and 2 women. Zhuowen was no stranger to these 5 disciples. They were all disciples of the Hall of Penal Law and could be considered as the elite disciples of the Hall of Penal Law. They were also the representatives of the Hall of Penal Law to participate in the Flourishing God Assembly. Senior Brother Zhuo. When the 5 saw Zhuowen open the door, they respectfully cupped their hands and saluted. Zhuowen's strength had already been widely spread in the Hall of Penal Law when Zhuowen defeated Zhu Ling. Now, all the disciples in the Hall of Penal Law knew that the white-clothed youth from the Hall of Penal Law was very strong and had defeated Deputy Hall Master Zhu Ling. What a rude guy. You actually made everyone wait for you. Your personality is still as arrogant and despotic as before. A neither cold nor cold voice sounded. Zhuowen turned his head and saw a bloated figure standing on the other side of the law enforcement elder. Wasn't this the Deputy Hall Master of the Hall of Penal Law, Zhu Ling, who had been knocked unconscious by Zhuowen? At this moment, Zhu Ling saw Zhuowen's gaze fall on him and immediately became nervous. The scene of him being beaten up by Zhuowen was still vivid in his mind. Zhuowen couldn't be bothered to pay attention to the clown Zhu Ling. Instead, he looked at Chen Fei on the other side and smiled. Congratulations, Brother Chen. You've successfully become a half-step Heaven's Will Master. At this moment, Chen Fei's smile was like a blooming chrysanthemum. It was extremely brilliant. He sincerely cupped his hands towards Zhuowen and said, Brother Zhuowen is too polite. If it weren't for your half-finished Heaven's Will pill, I wouldn't have been able to reach the half-step Heaven's Will realm in such a short time. When Chen Fei said this, the surroundings were in an uproar. Even the law enforcement elder looked at Zhuowen in surprise. Chen Fei's sudden promotion to half-step Heaven's Will Master caused an uproar in the Hall of Penal Law. All the disciples and even the law enforcement elder were guessing the specific reason why Chen Fei had become a half-step Heaven's Will Master. Now it seemed that it was because of the half-finished Heaven's Will pill that Zhuowen had given them. Zhuowen, you're really generous. The half-finished Heaven's Will pill should be quite useful to you. Giving it to Chen Fei like this is really good, the law enforcement elder said with a faint smile. Zhuowen only nodded and didn't say much. The half-finished Heaven's Will pill was personally refined by him. If he wanted it, it would be very easy for him to get it. Alright, let's go to the plaza. Seeing that Zhuowen didn't want to say more, the law enforcement elder didn't intend to ask any more. He shouted and led the group out of the Hall of Penal Law. At this moment, The plaza was extremely lively. The crowd was like a dragon, bustling with activity. At this moment, the plaza was completely built. At the edge of the plaza, there was a tall railing. The surface of these railings was overflowing with colors and emitted an extremely powerful restrictive light. It was obvious that these railings weren't ordinary objects. They were probably formed by powerful restrictive spells. At this moment, the cultivators who came to the plaza were blocked outside by these railings. At the center of the plaza stood an extremely tall tower. At the top of this tower, there was a bracket. Zhuoan knew that this bracket should be where the Huangji family's supreme treasure, the Sun-Moon Demon Mirror, was placed. As soon as Zhuoan entered the plaza, he felt several gazes fall on him. Moreover, these gazes contained inexplicable hostility. Chapter 2734. Galaxy of Stars' Second Brother. Is this the audacious guy? At this moment, many figures had gathered around Huang Yi. One of them was a handsome young man with a unique temperament and a vast aura. He patted Huang Yi's shoulder, whose eyes were filled with killing intent, and smiled at Zhuowen. Originally, the people around Huang Yi were chatting happily, but after the young man spoke, everyone quieted down. Everyone looked at the young man with eyes full of awe. This extremely handsome young man was no stranger to everyone. He was the youngest heir of the Huangji family, the fifth heir of the Galaxy of Stars. Galaxy of Stars had only cultivated for 500 years and was already at the peak of Hunyuan Master. In the Huangji family, Galaxy of Stars cultivation speed was even more terrifying than that of Huangji family's number one genius, Huang Wuqi. It should be known that Huang Wuqi was extremely talented and had cultivated to the peak of Hunyuan Master before he was 600 years old. Galaxy of Stars, on the other hand, was already at the peak of Hunyuan Master before he was 500 years old. This was even more amazing than Huang Wuqi back then. In terms of aptitude, Galaxy of Stars was definitely the strongest among the five heirs. Even Huang Wuqi was slightly inferior. However, Huang Wuqi had cultivated much longer than Galaxy of Stars and was the eldest son. Now that he was an eternal overlord, he already held a high position in the Huangji family. In terms of status, Galaxy of Stars was far inferior to Galaxy of Stars. Of course, everyone in the Huangji family knew that it was only a matter of time before Galaxy of Stars reached Huang Wuqi's current height. Moreover, what made them even more awed was that the three heads of the Huangji family and the popular Huang Wuqi loved Galaxy of Stars even more. Especially Huang Wuqi, when he had time, he would often take the time to guide Galaxy of Stars in his cultivation. In the Huangji family, only Galaxy of Stars could receive such treatment. When Huang Yi saw that it was Galaxy of Stars, his face immediately revealed a flattering smile. He didn't dare to treat this person in front of him as a younger brother. This was a true genius of the Huangji aristocratic family. His status was far above his, so he did not dare to slight him. Xinghe, you came at the right time. That person is the Zhuoan that I told you about. He is simply arrogant and doesn't put our crown prince in his eyes. Previously, he actually slapped my face ruthlessly. Huang Yi quickly said. Galaxy of Stars glanced at Huang Yi and curiously looked at Zhuoan. Second brother, this man is only the heavenly Tao master. I heard that your right hand was crippled by him. Galaxy of Stars' words were full of sarcasm, but Huang Yi didn't seem to hear the sarcasm in Galaxy of Stars' words. He still smiled and nodded repeatedly. Galaxy, he is too arrogant this time. After I was defeated, he spread the word that the crown princes are all trash. I was so angry that my right hand was crippled by him. Huang Yi sighed. Originally, Liu Qi wanted to take action. But the hateful thing is that the enforcement elder actually sided with this bastard. Galaxy, can you tolerate this? Galaxy of Stars smirked and glanced at Huang Yi. He could see that Huang Yi had a good plan, but he didn't intend to expose his lie. Instead, he said indifferently, this man is indeed very arrogant. From the looks of it, Elder of Enforcement is biased toward this kid, Yang Qi said. It seems he thinks he'll be able to achieve great results in the High God Assembly. Second brother, you're a piece of trash, but you were crippled by the heavenly Tao Lord. If I am lucky enough to meet this guy in the High God Assembly, I will help you deal with him. After saying that, Galaxy of Stars lazily leaned on the side and looked at the tower in the center of the plaza. He was participating in the High God Assembly to become a Heaven's Will Master. His current realm was already very high. As long as he wanted to, he could become a half-step Heaven's Will Master at any time. However, he suppressed his realm and planned to break through to the Heaven's Will Master realm in one go during the High God Assembly. It should be known that the Sun-Moon demonic mirror was the most precious treasure of the Huangji clan. It contained the power of the ancestral shaman venomous insect. He was 80% confident that he could use the mirror's power to become a Heaven's Will Master. Huang Yi glanced at Galaxy of Stars lazily leaning on the wall, and his face turned gloomy. Originally, he wanted Galaxy of Stars to teach Zhuowen a lesson. Unfortunately, Galaxy of Stars didn't care about his brotherly feelings. Huang Yi sighed inwardly. Galaxy of Stars had a cold temperament and looked down on his brothers. Even if he was beaten to death by Zhuowen, this guy wouldn't even frown. This guy was a ruthless person who was willing to pay any price and use any means to obtain greater power. Since Galaxy of Stars couldn't be relied on, Huang Yi knew that he could only rely on himself to eliminate Zhuowen. Huang Yi had prepared a lot of backup plans for this flourishing god assembly. He had gathered a group of talented disciples from the Huangji family. Once the flourishing god assembly began, Huang Yi would immediately look for Zhuowen, planning to kill him. Of course, Huang Yi had paid quite a price for this encirclement. After all, he wasn't like Galaxy of Stars. He didn't need to pay a price for many people to curry favor with him. Naturally, he needed to pay a certain amount of compensation for asking for help. Huang Yi's heart ached when he thought about how those geniuses had asked for an exorbitant price. At the same time, his hatred for Zhuowen grew. If it weren't for this kid, he wouldn't have become a laughingstock. He also wouldn't have had to spend so much effort to win over others and pay such a huge price. When the High God Assembly starts, I must make this kid kneel before me and let him have a taste of humiliation. Huang Yi looked in Zhuowen's direction and clenched his teeth, his hatred soaring to the sky. Zhuowen completely ignored Huang Yi. Instead, he was looking at the handsome youth not far away. This handsome youth shouldn't be very old, but his aura was much stronger than Huang Yi's. He could definitely be considered a genius among the younger generation. Brother Zhuo, that's the fifth prince of the Huangji clan, Galaxy of Stars. He's the most terrifying genius among the 5 princes. He's less than 500 years old, but he's already a peak primordial chaos master. Even the eldest prince, Huang Wuqi, wasn't as monstrous as him back then. Chen Fa, who was standing beside Zhuowen, said softly when he saw Zhuowen looking at Galaxy of Stars. Zhuowen nodded. Chen Fa had told him a lot about the High God Assembly, especially about Galaxy of Stars. Chen Fa had mentioned him a lot. Although Galaxy of Stars was only a peak primordial chaos master, his combat strength was much stronger than his cultivation level. It was said that when Galaxy of Stars was at the peak of primordial chaos master, he had killed Destiny Master Almighty with his bare hands. This matter had caused a sensation in the host region. He was able to challenge and kill a mighty figure at the second step of the Dao validation with his cultivation base at the first step of the Dao validation realm. Chapter 2735. Master of the Huangji family. Even in a Dao Palace level force, it was extremely rare for a genius to appear who could kill a Master of Heaven's Will who was an entire realm above him. Of course, the Dao Palace faction was a colossus, and there were still many prodigies like this. However, they were considered rare among the Dao Palace factions. The Galaxy of Stars even seemed to have attracted the attention of the 5 Dao Palace factions in the host territory. Of course, this was just attention. The Dao Palace faction's requirements for accepting disciples were abnormally high. Huang Wuqi was already crazy enough. It was said that Huang Wuqi had to be half a step into the 3rd step before he could have a chance of entering the Dao Palace faction. Of course, the harsh requirements of the Dao Palace faction were only for other factions. The requirements were much lower for local cultivators of the Dao Palace faction. After all, outsiders would always be outsiders. The galaxy of stars wasn't the only prodigy who had attracted the attention of the Dao Palace factions. There were also many prodigies in the host territory who had attracted the attention of the Dao Palace factions. There were even a few cases where the Dao Palace factions had accepted such prodigies before they had even proven their Dao because they were so heaven-defying. This matter had a far-reaching impact in the host territory and was widely spread. Chen Fa sighed softly when he saw that Zhuowen didn't seem to care. He felt that Zhuowen was too confident in himself. Zhuowen had previously displayed a move and defeated Zhu Ling, the Vice Hall Master of the Disciplinary Hall. However, to the galaxy of stars, Zhu Ling was just an ant that could be killed with a flip of his hand. The galaxy of stars would probably be able to cripple Zhu Ling in one move. However, judging from Zhuowen's previous performance, he was still inferior to the galaxy of stars. Chen Fa was very smart. He knew that if he continued speaking, it would obviously show that he didn't have confidence in Zhuowen. This would only make Zhuowen unhappy. You only know how to cause trouble for the disciplinary hall. If it weren't for the disciplinary elder protecting you, you would probably have died at the second prince's hands, Zhu Ling said in an extremely displeased tone. Vice Hall Master Zhu, if you don't like it, then bring it on. Let's see who's the real deal. Don't be like a meddlesome woman, gossiping at the side. Zhuowen glanced at Zhu Ling indifferently and said without any trace of politeness. These words caused Chen Fa and the other disciples to secretly laugh. Although Zhu Ling was the Vice Hall Master of the Hall of Penal Laws, this fellow did not have much real ability. He was only able to become the Vice Hall Master of the Hall of Penal Laws because he was good at sucking up to the second prince. What's more, this guy liked to order people around, and the disciples of the Hall of Beheadings and Executions were no exception. That was why the disciples of the Hall of Beheadings and Executions didn't like the Vice Hall Master at all. Now that they saw Zhu Ling suffer a loss in front of Zhuowen, they all felt great satisfaction. Zhu Ling was furious as she glared at Zhuowen. However, she quietly retreated a few steps behind the disciplinary elder and looked at Zhuowen fearfully. He knew very well that although this white-clothed youth's aura was only that of a heavenly Dao master on the surface, his true strength was extremely terrifying. Having suffered a loss last time, Zhu Ling naturally did not dare to fight with Zhuowen again. Otherwise, wouldn't that be asking for a beating? If you don't dare, then shut your mouth. If you say another word, don't blame me for being merciless. Zhuowen sneered disdainfully. Zhu Ling trembled with anger, but did not dare to act out. He knew very well that this white-clothed youth before him would do as he said. If he fought here, then he would definitely end up like the Hall of Penal Laws, or even worse. After all, the Hall of Penal Laws was their own territory, and this place was under the watchful eyes of everyone. If he, the Vice Hall Master of the Hall of Penal Laws, was defeated by an unknown disciple here, he would really lose all face. Thinking of this, Zhu Ling no longer spoke. Instead, she snorted coldly and turned her face away. The disciplinary elder stood on the spot and turned a blind eye to the conflict between Zhuowen and Zhu Ling. Instead, he said indifferently, when the Flourishing God Conference begins, the first master will activate the Sun-Moon demonic mirror. At that time, all you need to do is enter the fence by yourselves. Elder, what are the rules of the Flourishing God Conference? Zhuowen asked. I'm not too sure about the specific rules of the Flourishing God Conference. When the first master appears, he will naturally explain. However, I'm guessing that it must be related to the Sun-Moon demonic mirror. For all of you who are participating in the Flourishing God Conference, it will only be beneficial and not harmful. Moreover, the participants this time are all disciples of the Huangji aristocratic family. The first head can't really let you all kill each other and won't make this gathering too extreme. Zhuowen, you don't have to worry about it. At this point, Elder of Law Enforcement glanced at Zhuowen with a meaningful look. Zhuowen nodded. He understood the disciplinary elder's meaning. Clearly, he was reminding Zhuowen not to worry too much about Huang Yi. This time, I hope everyone will work hard and obtain a good ranking for our Hall of Penal Law, the disciplinary elder said. Apart from Zhuowen, Chen Fa and the others responded excitedly to the disciplinary elder. After a while, the noisy square quieted down, which attracted the attention of Zhuowen and the others. At the front of the square, the gate of the magnificent palace slowly opened, and two stalwart figures walked out from within. Behind the two stalwart figures were more than 10 people, each of whom had an extremely strong aura. Zhuowen looked at this group of people and narrowed his eyes. These more than 10 people were all supreme powerhouses in the second step of Dao validation, especially the two people in front. Their auras gave him a feeling that he could not see through them. Brother Chen, could these two fellows be the heads of the Huangji family? Zhuowen asked Chen Fa, who was beside him. Chen Fa nodded, his gaze revealed reverence as he said, yes, one of them is the first master, the other is the second master, whereas the long-haired man behind the two masters is the eldest heir, Huang Wuqi, whereas the others are all the core higher-ups of the Huangji clan. Usually, it is rare to see these higher-ups, but now they have all come out for the Flourishing God Conference. It can be seen that they attach great importance to this Flourishing God Conference. Hearing that, Zhuowen's gaze fell on the two heads again. The leader was a handsome young man who looked to be only 15 years old. However, he had a bald head. At first glance, he looked very much like a pure and innocent young novice monk. The second master was a fat man who looked like a mountain of meat. The second master's obesity was much more terrifying than Zhu Ling's. 3 Zhu spirits would probably only be on par with this second master. As for the first master, Huang Wuqi, behind the first master and second master, Huang Shan, his appearance was much more normal. His appearance was very ordinary, but his eyes shone with an extraordinary light. It could be seen that this person was not ordinary. Zhuowen sensed that Huang Wuqi's aura was much stronger than Kong Shi's. If Huang Wuqi were to face Kong Shi, he would be able to easily defeat him. Zhuowen heaved a sigh of relief when he did not see Huang Lin behind him. Chapter 2736. Entering the Sun-Moon demonic mirror, however, Zhuowen was worried that Fu Qi would recognize him. After all, when he killed Ping Han, a trace of Fu Qi's primordial spirit had seen his face and sensed his aura. If Fu Qi also came to the square, it would be easy for him to recognize him. At that time, Fu Qi would definitely find trouble with him. Moreover, Huang Lin would also help him out for Fu Qi's sake. Now that Huang Lin had not returned, it was undoubtedly the best news for Zhuowen. The great master, Huang Wu, walked to the front of the plaza. After exchanging some pleasantries, he said in a clear voice, "My Huangji family has a total of 108 halls. Every hall has its own position and its own genius. Today, I, Huang Wu, would like to express my gratitude to all 108 halls for taking out the Sun-Moon demonic mirror to host the High God Assembly. In the High God Assembly, the stronger you are, the more benefits you will receive. If you want more benefits, you have to become stronger." Speaking until here, Huang Wu waved his sleeve. A ray of light shot out from his sleeve and landed on the tower in the center of the square. Immediately, a ray of dim light spread out. Then, everyone saw a boundary formed by the dim light in a radius of 300 feet around the center of the square. The boundary of the boundary happened to be the fence that had been set up around the square. The Sun-Moon demonic mirror's power can affect the surrounding space. Within this radius of 300 feet, there is an endless world. In this endless world, there are many broken mirror pieces. These mirror pieces are the demonic mirror avatars that the Sun-Moon demonic mirror had nurtured for tens of thousands of years. They contain the essence of the Sun-Moon demonic mirror. This demonic mirror avatar was broken by me, second brother, and third brother. The broken mirror pieces are not dangerous to you, but you still have to be careful. Although they are just mirror pieces, their offensive power is extremely terrifying. Once you subdue the mirror pieces, you can immediately absorb the essence of the mirror pieces and increase your cultivation. As for the benefits of the mirror pieces, I don't need to tell you. I'm sure all of you have heard about it from your hall masters. After the barrier was formed, Huang Wu placed his hands behind his back. Although his voice was very soft, it was exceptionally loud. It resounded in everyone's ears like an echo in an empty valley. Even the lazy galaxy of stars became spirited after hearing Huang Wu's words. Their eyes were full of passion. He was already very close to reaching the second step of Tao corroboration, and this time, he wanted to obtain the opportunity to advance to the second step of Tao corroboration. Zhuowen's eyes shone like lightning. The mirror of the Sun-Moon demonic mirror clone should contain the power of the ancestor wizard Gu worms, which would bring unspeakable benefits to both his true body and his clone. The surrounding crowd was already in an uproar. They knew that the energy in the Sun-Moon demon mirror that could increase one's cultivation should be the fragment of the demon mirror. Of course, Zhuowen thought deeper than the others. The three heads of the Huangji clan had joined forces to barely break the demon mirror clone. This showed that the Sun-Moon demon mirror was not simple and its power was absolutely monstrous. However, at the same time, it also meant that the power within the Sun-Moon demon mirror was actually unable to be controlled by the three heads of the Huangji clan. Therefore, they would shatter the doppelgangers that the demon mirror gave birth to after a period of time. Their goal was to weaken the power of the demon mirror and make it easier to control. Thinking of this, Zhuowen became even more restless. His purpose for participating in the High God Conference was very clear. It was to obtain the ancestor wizard Gu worms. If the Sun-Moon demon mirror was completely under the control of Huangwu and the others, it would not be easy for him to obtain and absorb the ancestor wizard Gu worms. Now that the Sun-Moon demon mirror was not completely under the control of Huangwu and the others, Zhuowen still had a chance. Also, after you enter the endless world of the Sun-Moon demonic mirror, you can use any means you can think of to obtain it. Because the cultivators who die in the endless world will not truly die. Instead, they will be teleported out of the endless world. However, there's also a corresponding price to pay. That is, the energy of the mirror shards absorbed by the cultivators who died in the endless world will all be transferred to the winner's body. And for the next month, the winner will be in a weak state. Huangwu continued to speak, and the discussion below became much quieter. Many disciples were frowning. Obviously, Huangwu's rule was to let the cultivators who participated in the High God Conference kill each other. Fortunately, death in the endless world was not a true death. However, they would not be able to obtain any benefits and would be weakened for a month. This was definitely not good news for the cultivators who had a strong purpose. Then, I wish you all good luck. The High God Conference will last for a year. After a year, the Sun-Moon demon mirror will release the boundary. Huangwu smiled and waved his sleeve, opening more than 10 gaps in the fence around the square. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The moment the gaps appeared, some cultivators could not wait any longer. They flew out like a hurricane and entered the boundary. Zhuo Wen, Patriarch Law Enforcement said, "If you have the energy to spare, take care of the disciples from the Hall of Beheadings and Executions. If you don't, then forget about it. Make sure you can protect yourself, and don't get eliminated." Zhuowen found it funny. The enforcement elder was as calm as water at the beginning. Now that the High God Conference had begun, he became nervous. "Elder, don't worry. I will take care of the disciples of the Hall of Penal Law. Also, this time, I, Zhuowen, will help your Hall of Penal Law win the first place," Zhuowen said with a smile. "Hurry up and enter." The enforcement elder did not care about Zhuowen's words. In his heart, he thought that Zhuowen was just boasting. Zhuowen did not explain. He did have the confidence, but there was no need to explain it to the enforcement elder. When the time came, it would be more effective for the enforcement elder to see. Zhuowen walked in the front, while Chen Fa and the other 6 people followed closely behind Zhuowen. They all knew that Zhuowen was not simple. They wanted to follow Zhuowen, hoping that they could stick together and survive this year. As soon as he entered the boundary, Zhuowen saw the scenery in front of him quickly passing by. It was as if he, Zhuowen, had flipped through an endless world and seen endless sceneries. In the end, Zhuowen stood in the middle of a desolate desert. Above his head were 9 scorching suns, and above him were 9 huge suns. The heat emitted by each sun was extremely shocking. The golden desert under Zhuowen's feet seemed to be unable to withstand the high temperature. Large areas of the desert were scorched black. Zhuowen looked around and found that Chen Fa and the others were not behind him. In this desert, he stood alone. It seems that entering this endless world is random. Chapter 2737. Searching for the venomous wizard worm. However, Zhuowen soon discovered that his divine sense was blocked by a powerful force, so his divine sense could only extend to a range of 100 meters. Zhuowen's current divine sense was extremely powerful. It could extend as far as the entire Defan domain, but it could only extend to a range of 100 meters here. Zhuowen knew that there should be a powerful force shrouding the endless world. It was this force that repelled all other forces that entered this world. The endless world was simply too vast. To the endless world, 100 meters was simply a drop in the ocean. If he only relied on his divine sense to search for the sun-moon demonic mirror fragment, he did not know how long it would take. Moreover, Zhuowen was now eager to know the location of the venomous wizard worm hidden in the sun-moon demonic mirror. After all, this venomous wizard worm was the key to whether his Pangu sacred body could successfully advance to the 4-star realm. Zhuowen stopped on a small sand dune, withdrew his divine sense, closed his eyes, and began to sense with his own Zhurong venomous worm. The 12 ancestors of sorcery were natural enemies. Since he had the Zhurong venomous worm, he could naturally sense the other venomous wizard worm in the sun-moon demonic mirror. Zhuowen opened his eyes. Soon after, he extended his right hand through the air and a bright red flame appeared at the center of his palm. The flame looked like a venomous wizard worm. As soon as it appeared, it chose a direction and shot out. It was formed by a trace of the essence of the Zhurong venomous worm. It was like a clone of the Zhurong venomous worm and was extremely sensitive to other venomous wizard worms. Zhuowen followed closely behind the flame and swept out like an aurora. Zhuowen had been traveling in this desert for 3 days and 3 nights, but he was still in the desert. This showed how vast this desert was. In the process of traveling, Zhuowen also found that he did not meet many other practitioners who had entered the endless world. It should be known that there were at least thousands of practitioners who had entered the endless world. However, he had not met anyone after traveling for 3 days and 3 nights. This showed how vast the endless world was. Boom. After flying for 2 days and 2 nights, Zhuowen saw the edge of the desert. At the edge of the desert was another landscape world. There was a lush green prairie, and its area was comparable to the desert. However, at the edge of the desert, a terrifying energy exploded, sweeping out a terrifying storm, instantly enveloping Zhuowen's figure. Haha. Another fat sheep. Sure enough, guarding the borders of these 2 worlds was the best choice. In just 5 days, we've already reaped 2 rewards. A voice that was filled with wild joy was transmitted from under the sand. Immediately, a sand dune not far from the storm broke apart and 2 men rushed out. Among them, the green-clothed man's voice was more arrogant. He looked at Zhuowen, who was swept into the storm, and laughed loudly. His eyes were filled with joy. On the other hand, the white-clothed man beside the green-clothed man was much calmer. He shook his head and said, "The High God Convention has just begun. It's really not worth it for you to act so quickly. Some practitioners haven't even found the demon mirror fragment yet." The green-clothed man did not take it seriously and said, "We've been waiting here all this time. Now, we're just familiarizing ourselves with it and experimenting. When the time comes, we'll act again in a few months. Isn't it the same? All of this is to increase our chances of catching him." The white-clothed man did not answer. Instead, he looked at the storm and said, "Let's undo this formation first. After all, this is an origin grade formation. The practitioner who entered the formation just now was only a heavenly Dao master. I'm afraid he'll die without a doubt." The green-clothed man chuckled. Just as he was about to undo the formation, his pupils shrank as he discovered that the storm that seemed capable of reaching the heavens had collapsed in an instant, dispersing into dust. Amidst the dust, a young man in snow-white clothes slowly walked out. Zhuowen's eyes were like torches as he stared coldly at the stiffened green-clothed man and white-clothed man below him. He asked, "Did you guys deliberately set up this formation here?" The green-clothed man frowned slightly and did not answer Zhuowen's question. Instead, he asked rudely, "You're also a divine array master?" Zhuowen did not say anything else. Instead, He stretched out his right hand and punched at the green-clothed man. The green-clothed man was only a heavenly Tao master. How dare he deliberately set up a formation to kill him? Zhuowen was not so good-tempered that he would pretend that nothing had happened. Of course, since the green-clothed man and the white-clothed man were able to possess an origin-grade formation, it was obvious that they were rich. How dare a mere heavenly Tao master attack me? You're courting death. The green-clothed man sneered. He also clenched his right hand into a fist and punched it out toward Zhuowen. Crack. Unfortunately, the green-clothed man's right fist was instantly smashed into a cloud of blood mist. Then, the green-clothed man screamed in agony as his entire body exploded into a cloud of blood mist. He could not be more dead than he was. The white-clothed man, who had been watching the show, was stunned. He could not believe what he had seen. The white-clothed young man, who was only a heavenly Tao master, had killed his companion in one move. What kind of strength did that require? Let's go. The white-clothed man realized that something was amiss. After he came to his senses, he immediately fled in the opposite direction at an extremely fast speed. Unfortunately, no matter how fast the white-clothed man was, could he be faster than Zhuowen? Not long after he had fled, the white-clothed man screamed in agony and followed in the footsteps of the green-clothed man. After killing the two men, Zhuowen discovered that there were 8 thumb-sized green lights that flew out from their bodies. These green lights contained something similar to mirror fragments. Zhuowen knew that these things should be the fragments of the Sun-Moon Demon Mirror avatar that Huangwu had mentioned before. At the moment when these 8 green lights entered his body, Zhuowen immediately felt that his cultivation in his body seemed to have improved a little. Although the improvement was negligible, it was enough to shock Zhuowen. It should be known that the difficulty of improving the cultivation of Zhuowen's original body was much more difficult than that of ordinary practitioners. No one knew that when he had been promoted to Heavenly Tao Master, he had used a pile of special-grade Heavenly Tao origin crystals to barely be promoted. Now, just by absorbing 8 fragments of the Sun-Moon Demon Mirror avatar, he could clearly feel the improvement of his cultivation. It could be seen that the energy contained in the Demon Mirror avatar was very beneficial to his cultivation. Thinking of the various benefits of these fragments, Zhuowen's heart was filled with enthusiasm. He knew that as long as there were enough fragments of the Sun-Moon Demon Mirror avatar, it should be more than enough for his original body to be promoted to Daoyuan Master. However, Zhuowen was not in a hurry to find the Demon Mirror avatar. Instead, he planned to use the Zhurong venomous insect to find the location of the ancestral wizard venomous insect hidden in the Sun-Moon Demon Mirror avatar. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.